The moment Emma Hale's fingers brushed against Lucien Varise's throat to adjust his silk tie, she knew three things. This man could kill her without blinking. He was deciding whether to do it right now, and she'd just made the worst mistake of her life walking into this office. Blood still stained the marble floor near his desk, fresh enough that someone had tried scrubbing it minutes before her arrival. His eyes, cold as January steel, tracked every tremor in her hands. "You're either very brave," he said, his voice like gravel wrapped in velvet, "or spectacularly stupid. If you want to see where Emma's dangerous choice leads, stay until the end. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels." The subway ride from Brooklyn to Midtown Manhattan took 43 minutes, but Emma Hale had stopped counting after the first week. 6 months of slinging coffee and dodging handsy regulars at Romano's diner had taught her that time meant nothing when your bank account hovered at $73 and your landlord texted twice daily about overdue rent. The crumpled want ad in her coat pocket promised something different. Executive assistant. Discretion required. Compensation commensurate with responsibility. No company name, just an address on 57th Street and an interview time. She should have known better. The building rose like a glass knife against the gray November sky, all sharp angles and reflective surfaces that made her feel small before she even stepped inside. The lobby stretched out in polished white marble, the kind that showed every scuff mark from her secondhand boots. A security guard with shoulders like a linebacker watched her approach the reception desk, his hand resting a little too casually near his hip. "Emma Hale," she told the receptionist, a woman whose makeup looked airbrushed and whose smile didn't reach her eyes. "I have an appointment at 10. The woman's fingers flew across her keyboard, coral nails clicking. 42nd floor, elevator bank C. Someone will meet you." The elevator smelled like expensive cologne and fear, though Emma couldn't pinpoint why she thought that. Maybe it was the way the other passenger, a man in a charcoal suit who looked like he billed by the minute, stood rigid in the corner, staring at the floor numbers like they held the secrets of the universe. He got off on 37 without making eye contact. 42 came faster than Emma wanted. The doors opened onto a reception area that made the lobby look modest. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the Manhattan skyline like a postcard, but Emma barely noticed. Her attention snagged on the woman waiting by the elevator, tall, severe, with silver hair pulled into a bun tight enough to cause headaches. "Miss Hale, I'm Mrs. Chen. Mr. Varize is ready for you." No pleasantries, no small talk. Mrs. Chen turned on her heel and walked with the kind of posture that suggested military training or decades of ballet. Emma followed, her boots too loud against the hardwood floor. She passed offices with closed doors, heard the murmur of voices speaking languages she didn't recognize. Everything here whispered money and power and things that happen in shadows. Mrs. Chen stopped at double doors made of dark wood, the grain so perfect it looked artificial. She knocked twice, sharp, precise, and didn't wait for an answer before opening them. "Miss Hale, sir." Emma stepped inside and forgot how to breathe. The office stretched at least 40 feet, maybe more, with windows that turned the city into a backdrop. But that wasn't what stopped her. It was the man behind the desk, and the rust-colored stain on the marble floor 3 feet to his left, and the way he didn't look up from the document he was reading like she wasn't worth acknowledging yet. Lucien Varize wasn't handsome in any conventional sense. His face had too many hard edges, a nose that had been broken at least once, a scar that cut through his left eyebrow. Dark hair touched with silver at the temples, worn a little too long to be corporate. Probably mid-40s, though the way he held himself suggested someone who'd stopped counting years and started counting power instead. He wore a white shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows, no jacket, and his tie hung loose around his neck like he'd started getting dressed and forgotten to finish, or like someone had interrupted him. Emma's eyes kept drifting back to the stain. Fresh. The cleaning crew had tried. She could smell bleach underneath the cologne and leather, but blood was stubborn, especially that much of it. "Miss Hale." His voice cut through her thoughts, low and controlled. He still hadn't looked up. "You're 2 minutes late." She checked her watch. 10:02. "The elevator." "I don't care about the elevator. I care about punctuality. It suggests discipline, respect." He set down the document, and when his eyes finally met hers, Emma felt the temperature drop. Gray, almost colorless, with an intensity that made her want to step back. She didn't. "Do you respect other people's time, Miss Hale?" "When they respect mine." The words left her mouth before her brain could stop them. Shit. She watched something flicker across his expression, surprise maybe, or irritation, before it smoothed into neutrality. Interesting. He leaned back in his chair, a leather thing that probably cost more than her annual salary. "Mrs. Chen, you can go." The older woman left without a word, closing the doors behind her with a soft click that sounded too much like a lock engaging. Lucien gestured to the chair across from his desk. "Sit." Emma sat. The chair was less comfortable than it looked, positioned slightly lower than his, a deliberate choice. She'd waitressed long enough to recognize power plays. He opened a folder. Her folder, she realized, seeing the photocopy of her driver's license clipped inside. Emma Rose Hale, 26. Born in Providence, Rhode Island. Dropped out of NYU 3 years ago when your mother got sick. She died 7 months later. Cervical cancer. He said it like he was reading a grocery list. "You've worked 6 different service jobs since then, currently at Romano's Diner in Greenpoint, where your boss pays under the table and you split shifts with a line cook who has a prior conviction for assault." Her throat went dry. "How did you—" "I make it my business to know who walks through that door." He closed the folder. "The question is whether you're worth knowing. Tell me, Miss Hale, why did you apply for this position?" "The money. Honest. Refreshing. Most people lie, tell me they're passionate about administrative work." His mouth curved, not quite a smile. "But honesty without context is just noise. Why do you need money badly enough to answer an ad with no company name and no details?" Emma met his eyes, refused to flinch. "My landlord's threatening eviction. I'm 3 months behind. The diner pays enough to eat, not enough to live. And before you ask, yes, I've applied to other places. No, they don't call back. Turns out a partial degree and a work history full of 6-month stints doesn't scream, 'Hire me.' What does it scream? That I do what I have to do to survive." He studied her for a long moment, and Emma had the uncomfortable sense of being dissected. Not sexually, there was nothing crude in his gaze, but analytically, like she was a puzzle he was deciding whether to solve or throw away. "The position requires discretion," he said finally. "You'll see things, hear things that don't leave this floor. You'll manage my schedule, my correspondence, occasionally my conflicts. You'll be available when I need you, which may be at odd hours. You'll ask no questions about my business dealings. In return, you'll be paid $75,000 annually, with bonuses based on performance. Health insurance, 2 weeks paid vacation after the first year." He paused. "And you'll sign a non-disclosure agreement comprehensive enough to bury you if you violate it." 75,000. Emma's heart hammered against her ribs. That was more than she'd made in the last 2 years combined. What kind of conflicts? The kind that require someone who can think under pressure and doesn't panic easily. He stood, moving around the desk with a grace that seemed wrong for someone his size. He was tall, maybe 6'2", with the build of someone who knew how to use violence efficiently, the kind that sometimes leaves stains. He said it while standing next to the rust-colored mark on the floor. Emma should have run. Every instinct screamed at her to thank him for his time, walk out those double doors, and forget this office existed. Instead, she heard herself say, "What happened?" "An employee made a poor choice. I corrected it." "By killing him?" "I didn't say that." But he didn't deny it either. "I'm offering you a job, Miss Hale, not a confessional. You either have the stomach for what this entails or you don't. But decide now, because I don't make offers twice." She looked at the stain again, looked at him, thought about the eviction notice taped to her apartment door, about eating ramen for dinner 3 nights running, about her mother's hospital bills that still came in the mail like ghosts demanding payment, thought about having choices instead of just survival. "I need the non-disclosure agreement in writing before I agree to anything." That curve of his mouth returned, sharper. "Smart. Mrs. Chen will provide it. You start Monday. 8 a.m. Don't be late." "What if I say no?" "Then you walk out of here, go back to your diner, and wonder for the rest of your life whether you had the courage to take what you wanted. He moved closer, close enough that she caught his scent, something dark and woody, expensive. But you won't say no. I can see it in your eyes. You're already imagining what you'll do with that first paycheck. He was right, and Emma hated him for it. One more thing, she said, standing. She was tall for a woman, 5'9", but he still had 3 inches on her. I don't care what your business is. I don't care who you hurt or why. But if you ever threaten me, if you ever make me feel unsafe, I'm gone, money or no money. We clear? For the first time, Lucien Verret smiled, a real one, quick and unexpected. Crystal, though I suspect, Miss Hale, you're far more dangerous than you look. Before she could respond, he reached up and loosened his tie completely, pulling it over his head and holding it out to her. I have a meeting in 20 minutes. I never could get these damn things right. Fix it. Emma stared at the strip of silk in his hand. Midnight blue, probably Italian. I'm not your assistant yet. Consider it a test. She snatched the tie from him, stepping closer than she wanted to. He stood perfectly still as she looped it around his neck, her fingers brushing against his collar. His skin was warm, and she felt his pulse, steady, unhurried, like nothing rattled him. Her own heart was trying to break through her sternum. She tied her father's tie 1,000 times before he left, muscle memory making her hands efficient, even as her brain screamed at the intimacy of the moment. Lucien watched her face the entire time. Not the tie, his expression unreadable. When she finished, she stepped back and tugged it straight. There. Perfect. He didn't move. You have steady hands. That's good. I need someone who doesn't shake when things get complicated. Things like dead employees? Things like knowing when to ask questions and when to keep your mouth shut. He walked back to his desk, dismissing her with the gesture. Mrs. Chen will handle your paperwork. Welcome to Verret Enterprises, Miss Hale. Try not to die in the first month. Emma left before her legs could give out. The elevator ride down felt like falling, and she was gasping by the time she hit the lobby. She pushed through the revolving doors into the cold November air and walked 3 blocks before stopping in an alley to vomit into a trash can. Her hands were shaking now. She'd just accepted a job from a man who killed people, who admitted it without admitting it, who had her investigated like she was a security risk, who looked at her like he was calculating exactly how much pressure it would take to break her. And she'd said yes. Emma wiped her mouth, pulled out her phone, and called her landlord. I'll have the rent by Friday. All of it, plus late fees. You rob a bank, Hale? Something like that. She hung up and started walking back to the subway, trying to ignore the feeling that she'd just signed something way more binding than an employment contract. 6. Monday came too fast. Emma stood outside the building at 7:45 a.m., a new coat on her back, still secondhand but cleaner, and a thermos of coffee in her hand because she couldn't afford the lobby cafe. The same security guard from Friday nodded at her, and this time his hand didn't drift toward his hip. She'd been cleared. Mrs. Chen met her on 42 with a tablet and an expression that suggested smiling was a foreign concept. Mr. Verret is in a meeting until 9. I'll show you your station and go over protocols. Her station was a desk outside Lucien's office, positioned so she could see everyone who approached while monitoring 2 computer screens and a phone system that looked like it could launch missiles. Mrs. Chen ran through the basics with the efficiency of someone who'd done this before. Calendar management, call screening, correspondence templates. Then came the parts that made Emma's coffee curdle in her stomach. Code words, Mrs. Chen said, pulling up a document. Mr. Verret occasionally uses phrases that require immediate action. Clear my afternoon means lockdown protocol. You secure all files, wipe the computer cache, and deny entry to everyone except the names on this list. She indicated a short column of names Emma didn't recognize. Viper means call his brother immediately, no matter the time. And Nightingale. What's Nightingale? Mrs. Chen's expression went carefully blank. It means you leave the building within 5 minutes and don't come back until he contacts you. No questions, no delays. Emma's mouth went dry. Has he ever used it? Twice in the 10 years I worked for him. Both times, 3 people didn't leave fast enough. She closed the document. They don't work here anymore. Because they're dead? Because they didn't follow instructions. Mrs. Chen stood. Coffee arrives at 8:30. Black, 2 sugars, temperature no less than 180 degrees. He has dietary restrictions I've emailed you. Lunch is usually brought in, never ordered from the same place twice in a week. Visitors are announced, never surprised. And you never, ever enter his office if the red light above the door is on. Understood? Emma nodded, though nothing about this was understood. At 8:55, the double doors opened and 3 men filed out. All expensive suits, all wearing expressions like they'd just lost negotiations. Lucien followed, jacket on now, looking every inch the corporate predator. He barely glanced at Emma before disappearing back inside, leaving the doors open. "Miss Hale, my office." She grabbed her tablet and followed, hyper-aware of the carpet's give beneath her new flats, the way the windows turned the city into a toy model. Lucien stood by the glass, hands in his pockets, staring at something 42 floors below. "First day nerves?" he asked without turning. "Should I have them?" "Probably." He faced her. In daylight, the scar through his eyebrow was more pronounced, and she noticed another one along his jaw, faded but visible. "I have 3 calls this morning, London, Singapore, Los Angeles. I need you to take notes, flag anything that sounds like a commitment or a threat. Can you do that?" "Yes." "Good. Also, my brother's arriving at noon. He'll want lunch. Order from Maury's, Mrs. Chen has the number, and make sure they include the tempura appetizer, Dante's particular." "Brother." Emma filed that away. "Anything else? How's your Italian?" "Non-existent." "Pity. I have associates who prefer it. You'll pick up enough." He moved to his desk, started sorting through files. "One more thing. The people who come through that door, they're not all businessmen. Some of them are dangerous, some are desperate, some are both. You treat them all with the same professional detachment. No judgments, no fear. Can you do that?" Emma thought about the diner, about the guy who'd grabbed her ass last month and the way she'd accidentally dumped scalding coffee in his lap. "I've handled worse." "I doubt that, but I appreciate the confidence." He handed her a folder. "Familiarize yourself with these names, people I meet with regularly. You'll need to recognize them." She opened it and immediately wished she hadn't. The first photo showed a man with teardrops tattooed by his eye. Russian mob, she'd seen enough crime shows to know. The second was a woman in her 50s with the kind of smile that belonged on a grandmother, except the caption read, "Teresa Mancini. Waste management/money laundering." The third made her breath catch. "This is a federal prosecutor. James Brennan. He likes to pretend we're not friends. We have drinks twice a month and discuss ways he can look the other way without technically breaking his oath." Lucien's voice carried no shame. "Everyone's for sale, Miss Hale. The only variable is price." She closed the folder before she saw more. "And what's your price?" "I don't have one. That's what makes me dangerous." The phone on his desk buzzed. London calling. Lucien answered in clipped professional English, and Emma pulled out her tablet to take notes. Within 30 seconds, she realized she was listening to a conversation about shipping routes and container inspections that was definitely not about legitimate cargo. Words like package, clean route, and insurance got thrown around like euphemisms. And when Lucien said, "Make sure our friends at customs are properly compensated," she had to fight to keep her expression neutral. 2 more calls followed, each one peeling back layers of legitimacy to reveal the rot underneath. By the time noon arrived, Emma had notes on 3 separate criminal enterprises and a headache that pounded behind her eyes. Dante Varese arrived exactly at 12. Emma heard him before she saw him. A laugh, warm and genuine, so different from his brother's controlled tones that she looked up expecting a different person entirely. He was younger, maybe late 30s, with the same dark hair but without the silver, the same build but with an easier way of carrying it. Where Lucien wore power like armor, Dante wore it like a comfortable jacket. "You must be the new assistant." He stuck out his hand, grinning. "Dante, the better-looking brother." Emma shook it, caught off guard by the normalcy. "Emma, he treating you okay?" Because Lucien has this habit of forgetting employees need things like lunch breaks and basic human kindness. "I can hear you," Lucien called from inside his office. "I know!" Dante winked at Emma and walked in without knocking. "That's why I said it loud." Emma stayed at her desk, but the door remained open enough to catch fragments of their conversation. They switched between English and Italian, the latter flowing too fast for her to catch more than a few words. Familia, problema. Costa, family. Problem. Costa, probably a name. Can't keep doing this, Luke. Eventually, someone's going to push back hard enough. Let them push. We push harder. That's what Papa said, and look where it got him. Silence, sharp and uncomfortable. Then Lucien's voice, lower. Papa got sloppy. Sentimental. I'm neither. No, you're just lonely. There's a difference. More silence. Emma pretended to be very interested in an email about office supplies. When Dante emerged 20 minutes later, his easy smile had dimmed. He paused by her desk. Advice from someone who knows him? Don't mistake his control for safety. The tighter he holds things, the worse it gets when they slip. He left before she could respond. Emma delivered lunch, sushi, tempura, miso soup, and found Lucien at the window again, his back to the door. Your brother seems different. Dante believes in redemption, second chances, the goodness of humanity. He didn't turn. I believe in leverage, consequences, and the fact that everyone breaks eventually. It makes family dinners interesting. Are you close? He's my brother. Close doesn't factor into it. She set the food on his desk. The tempura is getting cold. I'm not hungry. You should eat anyway. Mrs. Chen said, Mrs. Chen worries too much. But he moved to the desk, picked up chopsticks with the same precision he did everything else. How are you finding your first day? Educational. That's diplomatic. Most people would say terrifying. Emma surprised herself by being honest. Both. Mostly I'm trying to figure out if I made the right choice taking this job. And ask me in a month, if I'm still alive. That almost smile again. Your survival instincts are better than you think. You're still here, aren't you? The rest of the week blurred into a crash course in criminal administration. Emma learned to recognize faces, decode conversations, and anticipate Lucien's needs before he voiced them. She learned that the man who looked like an accountant ran an underground gambling network, that the woman who dressed like a librarian moved heroin through her husband's trucking company, and that Lucien himself touched everything while directly controlling nothing, a ghost in the machine, pulling strings from 42 floors above the city. She learned that he worked 16-hour days, drank his coffee black enough to strip paint, and never ate lunch before 3 because mornings were for dealing with Europe. She learned that he hated small talk, valued efficiency over politeness, and had a tell when he was angry. His left hand would curl into a fist, just once, before he forced it to relax. She learned that despite everything, she didn't hate working for him, which scared her more than the bloodstain someone had finally managed to remove from the marble. Friday evening, Emma was packing up her desk when Lucien emerged from his office with his jacket over one arm. Walk with me. It wasn't a request. They took the elevator down in silence, rode through the lobby, and stepped into the November cold. The sun had already set, and the city lights turned the streets into veins of gold and red. Lucien started walking, and Emma followed, her shorter legs working to keep up. You did well this week, he said after 2 blocks. Better than I expected. What were you expecting? Most people quit after day 1. The ones who don't usually crack by Wednesday when they realize what they've gotten into. He glanced at her. You haven't cracked. Give it time. I don't think time's the issue with you. They stopped at a crosswalk, waited for the light. I think you're tougher than you let on. Question is whether that's going to save you or get you killed. Emma's breath fogged in the cold air. Is that a threat? An observation. This world, my world, it doesn't care about fairness or justice or any of the pretty lies people tell themselves. It cares about power. Who has it? Who wants it? Who's willing to kill for it? The light changed. He started walking again. You're standing in the middle of that now, and people are going to notice. What people? Rivals, enemies, anyone who thinks getting to me means going through you. Her stomach dropped. I'm just your assistant. You're the person I trust with my schedule, my calls, my vulnerabilities. In my line of work, that makes you valuable, which makes you a target. He stopped outside a wine bar, warm light spilling onto the sidewalk. I'm telling you this now because you deserve to know what you signed up for. and because I need you to be smart about it. How do I be smart about a target on my back? You stay close, you pay attention, and you tell me immediately if anyone approaches you who shouldn't. His expression went hard. I protect what's mine, Miss Hale. That includes my employees, but I can't protect you if you keep secrets. The possessiveness in his voice should have frightened her. Instead, it sent a different kind of shiver down her spine. Why are you telling me this? She asked. Because in about 30 seconds, a man named Vincent Costa is going to walk out of that bar, recognize me, and start a conversation, and I need you to watch his face when I introduce you. Can you do that? Emma's pulse kicked up. Why? Because Costa thinks he's smarter than me. He's been siphoning money from our joint accounts for 3 months, and he doesn't know I know. When he sees you, he's going to wonder if you're the reason I found out. I want to see if he's stupid enough to show it. Before she could respond, the door opened and a man stepped out. Mid-50s, expensive overcoat, the kind of face that smiled too easily. His eyes landed on Lucien and lit up with false warmth. Varese. Didn't expect to see you in this neighborhood. Costa, likewise. Lucien's tone was cordial, empty. This is my new assistant, Emma Hale. Emma? Vincent Costa. We do business together. Costa's gaze slid to her, and Emma saw it. The calculation, the quick assessment, the flash of something that might have been concern before his smile widened. Pleasure. Lucien's lucky to have you. Good help is hard to find. I'll remember that, Lucien said softly. Costa's smile faltered just for a second. Well, I should get going. Wife's expecting me. Let's have lunch next week, discuss our arrangement. Let's. They watched him walk away, his pace just a hair faster than casual. Did you see it? Lucien asked. Emma replayed the moment in her head. He was afraid. When you mentioned lunch, he knew you were on to him. Good. You're learning. Lucien started walking back the way they'd come. Costa will make a move in the next 72 hours. Either he'll try to cover his tracks, or he'll run. Either way, he's signed his death warrant. You're going to kill him. I'm going to have him killed. There's a difference. He said it so casually, like discussing weekend plans. I don't get my hands dirty unless it's personal. Emma's voice came out smaller than she wanted. Has it ever been personal? Lucien stopped, turned to face her fully. The streetlight cast half his face in shadow, and his eyes looked black instead of gray. Once, a long time ago, and I made sure no one ever gave me a reason to make it personal again. They stood there, the city moving around them, and Emma realized she was standing at a crossroads. She could walk away right now, ghost him, take her first paycheck and disappear into the kind of anonymity that kept people safe and small. Or she could stay, step deeper into the darkness, and hope she was strong enough to survive it. I should go home, she said finally. Probably. But he didn't move. Neither did she. A car pulled up to the curb, a black sedan with tinted windows. The driver got out, came around to open the back door. Lucien gestured to it. I'll have Marcus drive you. Brooklyn's too far to subway this late. I can manage. Emma? The use of her first name stopped her. Let me do this, please. She got in the car. The ride to Greenpoint took 30 minutes through Friday night traffic, and Emma spent it staring out the window, trying to process the last 5 days. The money had already hit her account. She'd checked obsessively, and she'd paid her landlord, her credit cards, had bought groceries without counting dollars for the first time in months. The relief had been overwhelming. But now, sitting in a car that probably cost more than she'd make in 5 years, being driven home by a man who definitely carried a gun, Emma wondered what she'd traded that relief for. The car stopped outside her building, a 5-story walk-up with a broken buzzer and graffiti on the door. Marcus, the driver, didn't comment on the neighborhood, just waited until she was inside before pulling away. Her apartment was on the 4th floor, a studio with a radiator that clanked and a view of the building next door. Emma dropped her bag, kicked off her shoes, and stood in the middle of her tiny space, trying to feel like herself again. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Make sure your door's locked. Sleep well. LV. She stared at the message, then at her door, which had 2 locks that barely worked. With shaking hands, she engaged both, dragged her chair under the knob for good measure, and sat on her bed fully clothed. She didn't sleep. Saturday morning, Emma woke to 17 missed calls from a number she didn't recognize and a text from Lucien. Office. Now. Bring coffee. She made it to the building by 8:15, still in yesterday's clothes, her hair in a messy bun. The lobby was empty except for security, and the elevator ride to 42 felt like ascending into hell. Mrs. Chen wasn't there. The floor was dark except for light spilling from Lucian's office, and the sound of raised voices. One his, one she didn't know, both speaking rapid Italian that sounded like a fight. Emma grabbed the coffee she'd picked up on the way and approached the open door, her heart in her throat. Lucian stood behind his desk, shirt sleeves rolled up, his tie long gone. Blood streaked his right hand, not his, she realized, because he wasn't favoring it. Across from him, a man she'd never seen before sat in the guest chair, his face a mess of bruises and his hands zip-tied behind his back. Both men looked at her when she entered. "You're late," Lucian said calmly, like there wasn't a beaten man bleeding on his floor. "I said bring coffee." Emma's hands were shaking so hard she nearly dropped the cup. There wasn't time to eat." "Relax, I'm fucking with you." He rounded the desk, took the cup from her, and drank deeply. "Emma, meet Vincent Costa. Vince, meet the woman who just ended your career." Costa's eyes went wide with recognition, then fury. He spat something in Italian that Emma didn't need to translate to understand was a threat. Lucien's response was 3 words, delivered in a tone that made the temperature drop 20 degrees. Costa went pale. "Take notes," Lucien told Emma, gesturing to her tablet. "Mr. Costa is about to tell us exactly how much he stole, where he hid it, and which of his associates helped him. Aren't you, Vince?" Costa said nothing. Lucien sighed, set down his coffee, and pulled a knife from his desk drawer. Not a letter opener, a real knife, the kind with a blade designed to cut through more than paper. Emma's vision tunneled. "Miss Hale." Lucien's voice cut through the roaring in her ears. "If you're going to vomit, do it in the bathroom. And if you're going to run, do it now, because what happens next isn't for the squeamish." She should have run. Every cell in her body screamed at her to run. Instead, she pulled out her tablet, opened a new document, and said, "Ready." Lucien smiled, cold, proud, terrifying. "That's my girl." He turned back to Costa, and Emma forced herself to watch, to document, to become complicit in whatever came next. Because she'd made her choice on that first day, when she'd tied his tie and felt his pulse against her fingers. And God help her, she was going to see it through. Costa talked. It took 40 minutes, a dislocated shoulder, and the knife pressed against the webbing between his thumb and forefinger before he broke completely. But he talked. Emma's fingers flew across the tablet, documenting bank account numbers in the Caymans, names of associates in Philadelphia and Boston, dates of transfers that went back 8 months instead of 3. Her hand cramped twice, and she kept typing. Her stomach turned over when Lucien snapped Costa's pinky finger backward with a sound like a branch breaking, and she kept typing. By the time Lucien called in 2 men Emma had never seen, both wearing the kind of blank expressions that came from practice, Costa was sobbing, begging in a mixture of Italian and English that made her want to cover her ears. "Clean him up," Lucien told the men. "Take him to the warehouse. Marco will handle the rest." They hauled Costa to his feet, and he looked at Emma with eyes gone hollow. "You're dead," he said, the words slurred through split lips. "You think he'll protect you? He can't even protect himself. Ask him about Natalyia. Ask him what happens to women in his world." Lucien moved faster than Emma thought possible, his fist connecting with Costa's jaw hard enough to snap his head back. "Get him out!" They dragged Costa away, leaving a blood trail on the hardwood that someone would have to clean. Again. Emma stood frozen, her tablet clutched against her chest like a shield. The office felt too small, the air too thin, and when Lucien turned to look at her, she saw something in his face that hadn't been there before. Concern, maybe, or calculation. "You did well," he said quietly. "I documented torture." Her voice came out steady, which surprised her. "That's not well. That's complicit." "Yes, it is. And you need to decide right now if you can live with that, because there's no middle ground here, Emma. You're either in or you're a liability I can't afford." The threat was implicit but clear. She'd seen too much, known too much. If she walked away now, she wouldn't make it to Brooklyn. "I'm in," she heard herself say. Lucien studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "Go home. Get some sleep. Monday morning, we're going to talk about your new responsibilities. You've graduated from assistant to something more. What's more? Someone I trust. He said it like it was a gift, and maybe in his world, it was. Emma left without another word, took the elevator down on legs that barely held her, and made it to the street before the shaking started. She leaned against the building's glass exterior, gulping cold air that tasted like exhaust and hot dog vendors, trying to remember who she'd been a week ago. That girl wouldn't recognize her now. She made it home somehow. Subway, autopilot, muscle memory. Her apartment felt like a stranger's space, too quiet, too safe. She stood in the shower until the water ran cold, scrubbing at skin that still felt dirty, then crawled into bed and stared at the ceiling until gray dawn crept through her window. Sunday passed in a fog. Monday arrived too fast. Emma showed up at 7:45 wearing her only decent dress and makeup that almost hid the shadows under her eyes. Mrs. Chen was already there, and so was someone new. A woman, maybe 30, sharp-featured, with black hair and a severe bob and eyes that assessed Emma like a threat. Sophia Raines, Mrs. Chen said by way of introduction. Mr. Verese's legal counsel. Sophia extended a hand that felt like ice. I've heard about you, the assistant who doesn't run. Apparently. Let's see how long that lasts. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. He's waiting for you, both of you. Lucy Yen's office had been cleaned. No blood, no evidence that Vincent Costa had ever existed. He stood by the windows in a charcoal suit that probably cost 5 figures, looking every inch the legitimate businessman. If Emma hadn't seen what she'd seen Saturday, she might have believed it. Sit, he said without preamble. Emma and Sophia took the chairs across from his desk. Mrs. Chen remained standing by the door like a sentinel. Lucian opened a folder. Emma's folder, she realized with growing dread. Costa gave us 12 names before he stopped being useful. 6 are scrambling to cover their tracks. 3 have already run. 2 are dead. Accidents, officially. The last one is sitting in a holding cell downtown, courtesy of our friend James Brennan, who's charging him with tax evasion while we decide what to do with him. What does this have to do with me? Emma asked. Everything. Costa wasn't wrong when he said people would come after you. His Philadelphia contacts know someone gave me the information. They know it came from inside this office. They're going to assume it was you. Emma's blood went cold. But I didn't. Doesn't matter. Perception is reality in this business. He closed the folder, leaned back in his chair. Which is why you're going to need protection. Personal security, vetted by Dante. New apartment, corporate-owned, with actual locks that work. And you're going to carry this. He slid something across the desk, a small black case. Emma opened it and felt her stomach drop. A gun. Compact, matte black, the weight of it wrong in her hands. I don't know how to use this. You will by Friday. Marco's an excellent teacher. Lucian's tone left no room for argument. You're also going to learn basic defensive tactics, how to spot a tail, and what to do if someone tries to grab you off the street. Consider it part of your expanded job description. Sophia leaned forward. You should also know that accepting these measures means accepting the liability that comes with them. If you use that weapon, even in self-defense, you'll be tied to Mr. Verese legally and publicly. There's no walking away clean after that. Was there ever? Emma met Lucien's eyes. Tell me the truth. Could I have walked away after that first day? His silence was answer enough. Then stop pretending I have a choice. Just tell me what you need me to do. Something flickered across his expression. Approval, maybe, or respect. I need you to be smart, vigilant, and I need you to trust me when I say that as long as you're under my protection, no one will touch you. Like Natalyia? The name hit the room like a grenade. Mrs. Chen stiffened. Sophia's eyes went wide, and Lucien's face went absolutely blank in a way that was more terrifying than any anger. Who told you that name? His voice was soft, deadly. Costa? Before you broke his jaw. He said I should ask about her, about what happens to women in your world. He said that to rattle you, to make you doubt. Did it work? Lucien stood, walked to the window, his back to all of them. When he spoke again, his voice was stripped of emotion. Natalyia was my fiancée, 7 years ago. She was smart, ambitious, wanted to open an art gallery in Soho. She knew what I did, accepted it, thought love was enough to keep her safe. He paused. She was wrong. A rival family took her to get to me. They kept her for 3 days before sending her back in pieces. Emma's hand flew to her mouth. Sophia looked away. Even Mrs. Chen's iron composure cracked. I burned that family to the ground, Lucien continued, still not turning. Every member, every associate, every person who knew and didn't stop it. It took 6 months and left a power vacuum that nearly started a war. And when it was over, I swore I'd never let myself care about anyone that much again. Because caring is weakness, and weakness gets people killed. He finally turned, and Emma saw something raw in his face before he shuttered it. That's what Costa wanted you to know, that I'm not your savior. I'm the reason you need saving in the first place. The room held its breath. I'm not Natalyia, Emma said finally, and I'm not asking you to love me. I'm asking you to do what you promised. Keep me alive. Can you do that? Or should I start making funeral arrangements? Lucien's mouth curved slightly. You've got a spine made of steel, Miss Hale. Let's hope it's enough. The meeting ended with assignments. Emma would move to the new apartment by Wednesday, start training Thursday, and continue her regular duties while learning to navigate a world where every handshake might hide a knife. Sophia provided a legal document that essentially made Emma a ghost. Her name scrubbed from public records, her identity protected by shell companies, and NDAs thick enough to choke on. Sign here, here, and here, Sophia said, pointing. Initial at the bottom. And understand that if you violate any of these terms, you won't live long enough to see the inside of a courtroom. Emma signed. By Tuesday afternoon, she'd memorized the faces of 20 more players in Lucien's network and fielded 6 calls from people who spoke in code so thick she needed Mrs. Chen to translate. By Wednesday evening, she stood in a Tribeca loft 3 times the size of her old apartment, watching movers unload boxes she'd packed in a daze. The loft had floor-to-ceiling windows, a kitchen with appliances she didn't know how to use, and a security system that required a fingerprint to disarm. It also had a guard named Marcus, the same driver from her first week, who lived in the building and whose job was to make sure she didn't die. You really think this is necessary? Emma asked him while unpacking books. Marcus, 6'4" and built like a tank, just looked at her. Had a boss once who thought the same thing, skimped on security to save money. His daughter got taken on her way to school. They sent her back 3 days later in a cooler. Emma stopped unpacking. Jesus. No Jesus in this world, Miss Hale. Just consequences. He handed her a card with a phone number. That's my direct line. You see anything weird, hear anything off, get a feeling in your gut, you call. I don't care if it's 3 a.m. and you think you're being paranoid. I'd rather respond to 50 false alarms than one real threat too late. She added the number to her phone, and Marcus left her to finish unpacking alone. The loft felt too big, too empty, and Emma found herself missing her shitty radiator and graffitied door. At least there, she'd known who she was. Thursday morning, she met Marco at a gun range in Queens that smelled like sulfur and fear. He was mid-50s, graying at the temples, with hands that moved with the precision of a surgeon, and eyes that had definitely killed people. First rule, he said, loading the compact 9mm Lucien had given her. Never pull it unless you're ready to use it. Second rule, always assume it's loaded. Third rule, if you have to shoot, you shoot to kill. Center mass, 2 shots, reassess. Understand? Emma's hands were sweating inside the foam earplugs. I don't know if I can kill someone. You won't know until you have to. But if it comes down to you or them, I need you choosing you every time. Boss's orders. He handed her the gun, positioned her stance. Feet shoulder width. Firm grip, not strangling. Breathe out. Squeeze the trigger. Don't pull. Squeeze. The first shot went wide, the recoil jerking her hands up. The second barely hit the paper. By the 5th, her ears were ringing despite the protection, and her arms ached. By the end of the hour, she'd put 3 shots in the center ring. Marco nodded. You'll live. Maybe. They met 3 more times that week, then twice the next. Emma learned to field strip the gun, clear jams, reload under pressure. She learned that her hands would shake the first dozen times, and that was normal. She learned that imagining the target as a person made it harder, so she stopped imagining. She also learned basic defensive tactics from a woman named Yuki, who was 5'2" and could put Emma on the floor in under 3 seconds. Pressure points, escape holds, how to use keys as a weapon, how to scream in a way that actually got attention instead of just making noise. Your biggest advantage is that people underestimate you, Yuki said during their fourth session, after Emma had almost managed an escape from a rear choke. You look soft, vulnerable. Use that. Let them think you're weak right up until you're not. Emma, breathing hard on the mat, nodded. How long until I'm actually good at this? Years. But you don't need to be good. You just need to be good enough to survive until help arrives. Yuki offered her a hand up. Boss really cares about you, you know. I've trained 12 of his people. Only 3 got this much personal attention. The others were family. I'm not family. Not yet. Yuki's smile was knowing. But give it time. Emma didn't know what to do with that, so she threw herself into the next drill until her muscles screamed and her brain stopped asking questions she couldn't answer. 3 weeks into her new normal, Dante showed up at the office with takeout and a grin that said he was about to make Lucian's life difficult. Family dinner, he announced, dropping bags on Emma's desk. Tonight, 7 p.m. You're coming. Emma looked up from the expense report she was reviewing. I don't think... Not a request. Mama wants to meet the woman who's got Luke's attention, and when Mama wants something, we all suffer until she gets it. He lowered his voice. Fair warning, she's going to interrogate you like a war criminal, feed you until you can't move, and probably try to set you up with someone nice and safe who doesn't run a criminal empire. Just smile, eat the cannoli, and whatever you do, don't mention Natalyia. Dante, Lucien's voice cut from his office. Stop terrifying my assistant. I'm preparing her. There's a difference. Dante grabbed a container of lo mein and walked into his brother's office without knocking. You were actually going to make her walk into that blind? That's cruel even for you. Emma heard Lucien sigh. I was going to brief her. When? 5 minutes before? You're terrible at this. At what? Anything involving human emotions. It's your worst quality. Well, second worst after the whole organized crime thing. Their voices dropped into Italian, rapid fire, and clearly arguing. Emma tried to focus on her work, but Sophia chose that moment to arrive with a stack of contracts that needed review. Family dinner tonight, she said, not bothering with pleasantries. You'll need something appropriate to wear. Not that. She gestured dismissively at Emma's blouse. I've sent options to your apartment. Pick one that doesn't make you look like a secretary. I am a secretary. You're Lucien Varese's right hand. There's a difference. And tonight, every person in that room is going to be evaluating whether you're a threat, an asset, or a liability. Dress accordingly. She left before Emma could respond. At 6:30, Emma stood in her bathroom staring at 3 dresses that probably cost more than her old monthly rent. She chose the navy one, sophisticated, high-necked, nothing that screamed trying too hard. Applied makeup with hands that only shook a little, stared at herself in the mirror, and saw a stranger looking back. Marcus drove her to a brownstone in Carroll Gardens that looked modest from the outside and was anything but inside. The entry hall had marble floors, original crown molding, and a chandelier that threw rainbow prisms across cream-colored walls. Voices and laughter spilled from deeper in the house, warm and alive in a way that made Emma's chest tight. Dante met her at the door, took in her dress, and whistled low. Okay, Sophia's got good taste. You look dangerous. I feel like I'm going to throw up. That's normal. Come on, I'll introduce you to the firing squad. The dining room was chaos. A table set for 12, already half full with people talking over each other in English and Italian. At the head sat a woman in her 70s with silver hair, sharp eyes, and the kind of presence that made everyone else look like supporting cast. Lucien's mother had to be, because he was sitting to her right, looking profoundly uncomfortable in casual clothes Emma had never seen him wear. Mama, Dante said, steering Emma forward. This is Emma Hale. Emma, our mother, Isabella Varese. Isabella stood, shorter than Emma expected, maybe 5'4", but radiating authority. She took Emma's hands, studied her face with an intensity that felt invasive, then pulled her into a hug that smelled like lavender and garlic. Finally, she said, her English touched with an accent that time hadn't erased. Someone who isn't afraid of my son. Sit, next to Lucien. We eat soon. Emma found herself guided to a chair beside Lucien, who looked at her with something that might have been apology. Breathing? He murmured. Barely. It gets worse. He wasn't wrong. The next hour was a masterclass in controlled interrogation disguised as family warmth. Isabella asked about Emma's family: dead father, dead mother, no siblings; her education, unfinished; her plans, surviving the week. She asked it all while serving lasagna, roasted vegetables, bread that was still warm, wine that tasted like velvet. Other family members chimed in: cousins, an aunt, Dante's girlfriend Sophia, who was somehow both sweet and calculating. They asked about her work, carefully avoiding specifics, dancing around the truth everyone knew, but no one said. "So you work for Lucien," said Marco, a different Marco, younger, probably a cousin. "That must be interesting." "It's never boring," Emma said carefully. "I bet. What's the craziest thing you've seen?" The table went quiet. Lucien's hand, resting on the table, curled into that telltale fist. Emma took a sip of wine, met Marco's eyes. "Last week, someone tried to expense a trip to Atlantic City as market research. I denied it. He tried to argue. I told him to read the corporate policy manual. He called me well, I can't repeat it here. So I flagged every expense report he'd filed for the last 6 months and found 12 violations. He doesn't work for us anymore." Laughter rippled around the table. The tension broke. Lucien's hand relaxed. "I like her," Isabella announced. "She has spine. You need someone with spine, Lucien. Someone who tells you no." "She tells me no daily," Lucien said dryly. "Good. Maybe she keeps you from becoming your father." The laughter died. Lucien's jaw tightened. Dante shot their mother a look that screamed, "Not now." "Papa made choices," Lucien said quietly. "I make different ones." "Do you?" "Because from where I sit, you look just like him. Surrounded by business, never by family. Always holding everyone at distance because you think caring makes you weak." Isabella's voice was gentle, cutting. "You know what makes you weak? Dying alone because you were too proud to love anyone." "Mama," Dante started. "No. He needs to hear this. Both of you do." She looked between her sons. "I lost your father to this life. I watched him choose power over people, strategy over sons, until the day someone put a bullet in his head, and there was no one left who cared enough to mourn him. I won't watch you do the same." Silence crashed over the table like a wave. Lucien stood, his chair scraping loudly. "Excuse me." He walked out of the dining room, and Emma heard a door slam somewhere deeper in the house. Isabella sighed, suddenly looking every one of her 73 years. "That boy. So much his father's son." She looked at Emma. "You should go to him." "I don't think—" "Go. He listens to you. I see it. He doesn't let many people close, but you're already there whether he admits it or not." Emma found him in what looked like a study, standing by a window that overlooked a small garden. His shoulders were rigid, his hands shoved in his pockets. "I'm fine," he said without turning. "Go back to dinner." "Your mother thinks I should stay." "My mother thinks a lot of things, most of them wrong." But he didn't tell her to leave. Emma moved closer, stopped a few feet away. "She loved him, your father. She loved who he was before the business consumed him. By the end, there wasn't anything left to love." He finally turned, and in the low light, he looked younger, tired. "You know what the worst part is? I remember him being different. When I was maybe 6, 7 years old, he'd take Dante and me to Coney Island. We'd eat hot dogs, ride the Cyclone until we were sick, and he'd laugh. Actually laugh. Then something shifted. Business got complicated, people started dying, and he stopped being a father and became whatever he became. And you're afraid you'll do the same. I already have. Look at me, Emma. I run an empire built on violence and fear. I've killed people, ordered deaths, destroyed lives because it was strategically sound. I'm exactly what he was." "No, you're not." "How would you know?" "Because he wouldn't have hesitated with Costa. He wouldn't have given me a choice about staying or leaving. He wouldn't have his mother over for dinner or let his brother give him shit." Emma stepped closer, close enough to see the flecks of blue in his gray eyes. "You're not your father, Lucien. You're just terrified of becoming him, which means you're still fighting it. The day you stop fighting is the day you should worry. He stared at her, something unreadable crossing his face. You're dangerous. So you keep saying. No, I mean it. You're dangerous because you make me want things I've spent 7 years convincing myself I can't have. The air between them went electric. Emma's heart hammered against her ribs. Like what? He moved closer, close enough that she could feel his body heat, smell his cologne mixed with something uniquely him. His hand came up, hesitated, then brushed a strand of hair behind her ear with a gentleness that seemed impossible from someone she'd watched break bones. Like this, he said, and kissed her. It wasn't gentle. It was desperate, consuming. 7 years of loneliness and fear and need poured into the press of his mouth against hers. Emma's back hit the wall. When had they moved? And her hands fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer, even as her brain screamed that this was a mistake, a line they couldn't uncross. She didn't care. His hands framed her face, tilted her head to deepen the kiss, and Emma felt herself falling into something that had no safety net. This wasn't professional. It wasn't safe. It was reckless and stupid and exactly what she wanted. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Lucian rested his forehead against hers. We can't do this, he said. I know. It complicates everything. I know. If people find out, it makes you an even bigger target. I know. Emma met his eyes. I don't care. You should. Probably. But I'm tired of being safe, tired of being careful, tired of pretending I don't feel this. She touched his face, felt the rasp of stubble under her palm. So either tell me right now this doesn't mean anything, or stop trying to protect me from my own choices. Lucian was quiet for a long moment. Then, it means everything. That's the problem. Before Emma could respond, Dante's voice called from the hallway. Hey, Mama's bringing out dessert, and if you two don't get back here, she's going to come find you. And trust me, you don't want that. They separated like guilty teenagers. Lucian straightened his shirt, ran a hand through his hair. Emma's lips felt swollen, her face flushed, and there was no way anyone at that table would miss what had just happened. We should talk about this, Lucian said. Later. Emma, Later. Right now I need cannoli and the ability to look your mother in the eye without combusting. They returned to the dining room where Isabetta was indeed serving dessert, her knowing smile suggesting she'd orchestrated the whole thing. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of sugar and coffee and sideways glances that Emma felt like brands. Marcus drove her home at 11, and she made it to her apartment, closed the door, and slid down it to sit on the floor, her dress pooling around her. She'd kissed her boss, her criminal boss, who'd killed people and would kill again, and she wanted to do it again. Emma pulled out her phone, stared at it for a full minute before texting. We need rules. Lucien's response came 30 seconds later. Come to the office tomorrow, 6 a.m. We'll talk. Just talk? Don't push your luck. Emma smiled despite everything, hauled herself up, and got ready for bed. Sleep was a lost cause, but she tried anyway, her mind replaying the kiss, his hands on her face, the way he'd looked at her like she was something precious and terrifying all at once. Friday morning, she arrived at the office at 5:55 a.m. to find Lucian already there, 2 cups of coffee on his desk. He'd changed from last night's casual clothes back into his armor, suit, tie, the mask of control firmly in place. Sit, he said. Emma sat, took the coffee he offered. So, rules. Rule 1. This doesn't happen at the office. Ever. I can't afford the distraction, and you can't afford people thinking you're sleeping your way into influence. Agreed. Rule 2. We keep it private. No one knows except maybe Dante, who's too observant for his own good. Not Mrs. Chen, not Sophia, not the family beyond what they already suspect. Makes sense. Rule 3. If this becomes a liability, if someone tries to use you against me or if it compromises your safety, we end it. No arguments, no negotiations. Emma set down her coffee. No. Lucian's eyebrows rose. No? I won't agree to let you push me away the second things get dangerous. They're already dangerous. That's not changing. So either we're in this together or we're not in it at all. Emma, I mean it, Lucian. I'm not Natalyia. I'm not going to be another person you failed to protect because you were too busy trying to control everything. Either you trust me to handle myself or this stops right now. He was quiet for so long she thought she'd miscalculated. Then he stood, came around the desk, and pulled her to her feet. "You're going to drive me insane," he said. "Probably. And you're not going to make this easy." "Definitely not." "Fine, we're in it together. But you follow security protocols, you don't take unnecessary risks, and if I tell you to run, you run. Understood? Only if you promise not to make unnecessary sacrifices because you think I can't handle the consequences." He kissed her instead of answering, and Emma took that as agreement. They spent the next hour actually talking about boundaries, about what this meant, about the fact that neither of them was particularly good at relationships, and this one came with complications that would make most people run screaming. They agreed to take it slow, whatever that meant in a world where slow might end in a body bag. By Monday, Emma had convinced herself they could manage this, that she could keep her professional mask on at the office, her guard up around the family, her head clear enough to do the job Lucian paid her for. Then Tuesday afternoon, a woman walked into the office. She was maybe 40, stunning in the way money and good genetics could engineer, with blonde hair and a twist and a designer dress that probably cost what Emma made in a month. She bypassed Mrs. Chen entirely, walked straight to Lucian's door, and knocked once before entering. Emma heard Lucian's voice, sharp with surprise. "Natalyia?" And just like that, Emma's carefully constructed normal shattered into 1,000 pieces. She stood, moved to the door, and saw them. Lucien frozen behind his desk, the blonde woman standing in the middle of his office like she owned it, and an expression on his face Emma had never seen before. Fear. The woman turned, noticed Emma, and smiled. "You must be the new assistant. How lovely. I'm Natalyia Corso, Lucien's fiancée." "Ex-fiancée," Lucien said, his voice tight. "You're dead." Reports of my death were greatly exaggerated. Natalya's smile sharpened. "Surprised, darling? You should be. We have so much to catch up on." Emma's hand drifted toward the gun in her desk drawer, and Natalya's eyes tracked the movement with predatory interest. "Oh," she said, delighted. "This one has claws. How refreshing." Lucian moved between them, his body language screaming threat. "Emma, leave." Lucien, "Now." But it was too late. The doors opened again, and 3 men Emma didn't recognize walked in, guns already drawn, and she knew with sickening certainty that whatever came next, nothing would ever be the same. Natalya's smile was razor sharp. "Hello, lover. Did you miss me?" Emma's hand was already moving toward the drawer when Lucien's voice cut through the room like a blade. "Don't!" She froze, fingers inches from the gun, her eyes locked on the 3 men who'd fanned out across the office with the kind of precision that came from military training or years of practice killing people. They wore suits that didn't quite hide the shoulder holsters, and their faces held the blank professionalism of men who'd done this before and would do it again. Natalyia moved to Lucien's desk, perched on the edge like she owned it, like the last 7 years hadn't happened. "Put your hands where I can see them, sweetheart. Slowly." Emma raised her hands, her heart slamming against her ribs so hard she thought it might crack bone. Lucien stood perfectly still, his face wiped clean of emotion, but she could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his left hand curled into that familiar fist. "How?" he said, the single word carrying the weight of years. "How am I alive?" Natalyia examined her nails, coral polish gleaming. "That's the question, isn't it? Not, why are you here? Or, what do you want? Just, how?" Always so practical, Lucien. "It's one of the things I loved about you." "You were dead. I saw the—" He stopped, swallowed hard. "I saw what they sent back." "Oh, that?" She waved a hand dismissively. "That was Marissa Cobb. Poor thing. Wrong place, wrong time, right blonde hair. The Catalano family wasn't particularly discerning about details. They just needed a body to make a point." Her smile was mercury, slipping and dangerous. "I made sure you got one." Emma watched Lucien's face crack, just for a second, before he rebuilt the mask. "You faked your own death. I staged my own liberation. There's a difference." Natalyia slid off the desk, moved closer to him with the confidence of someone who knew exactly how much power she held. "You were always going to choose this life over me, darling. The business, the empire, the legacy. I was just an accessory, something pretty to show off at dinners while you built your kingdom. That's not—" "It is, and we both know it. So I gave you what you wanted, a tragedy, a reason to feel something, a motivation to burn the Catalanos to ash, which you did beautifully, by the way. Very thorough. She touched his face, and Emma's hands clenched into fists. And while you were playing the grieving widower, I took everything you didn't know you'd given me. Account numbers, passwords, compromat on half the syndicate families from here to Chicago. I've been building my own empire, Lucy. And one you'll never touch. Why come back? His voice was hoarse. If you have everything you want, why now? Natalya's eyes shifted to Emma, and her smile sharpened. Because I heard through the grapevine that you'd found a replacement, and I got curious, wanted to see what kind of woman could make you forget me. I didn't forget you, I mourned you. Past tense, how romantic. She turned fully to Emma now, assessing her with the kind of look that felt like being flayed. Emma Hale, 26, Brooklyn waitress turned executive assistant. No criminal record, no family, no protection except what he gives you. You're nothing like me. Emma met her eyes, refused to flinch. Thank God for that. One of the gunmen chuckled before cutting himself off. Natalya's expression went cold. You think you're clever, brave, even, but you're just another pawn in a game you don't understand. She moved closer, and Emma could smell her perfume, something floral and expensive that made her want to gag. Do you know what he did to the men who took me? Not the quick deaths, the ones he kept alive. Natalyia. Lucien's voice carried a warning. He pulled out their fingernails one by one, broke their bones with a hammer, kept them conscious and screaming for days before he finally let them die. And you know what the worst part is? She leaned in, her breath hot against Emma's ear. He enjoyed it. I saw the recordings. He smiled. Emma's stomach turned over, but she kept her voice steady. I'm not afraid of him. Then you're stupider than you look. Natalyia stepped back, addressed Lucien again. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to transfer $50 million to the account I specify. You're going to do it within the next 6 hours. And in exchange, I'll disappear again. No fuss, no complications. And if I don't? Then I release 7 years of documentation to the FBI, the IRS, and every major news outlet in the country. Bank records, wire transfers, meeting transcripts, video footage of you personally executing Antonio Catalano in that warehouse in Red Hook. She pulled out her phone, swiped through it, and held up an image that made Lucien's face go white. You'll spend the rest of your life in a supermax prison. Your family will be destroyed. And this one, she gestured to Emma, will be collateral damage before the end of the week. The silence that followed felt like drowning. Emma watched Lucien's mind work, saw him calculating odds and consequences, trying to find an angle that didn't end in catastrophe. His eyes flicked to her once, quick and full of something that might have been apology, before returning to Natalyia. You have a deal, he said. Lucien, Emma started. Quiet. He didn't look at her. I'll need 4 hours to liquidate the assets without triggering flags. Your men stay here as insurance. When the transfer clears, they leave with you. Natalyia considered this, then nodded. Acceptable. But she stays in the room where I can see her. No codes, no signals, no clever rescue attempts. We clear? Crystal. She gestured to one of her men, who pulled out zip ties and moved toward Emma. Lucien's hand shot out, grabbed the man's wrist hard enough to make him wince. Touch her, and the deal's off. The man looked to Natalyia, who sighed like she was dealing with a toddler. Fine. She can keep her hands free. But Marcus, she addressed the gunman. If she moves toward that desk drawer again, shoot her in the leg, somewhere painful but not fatal. Marcus nodded, repositioned himself with a clear line of sight to Emma. The next 4 hours were the longest of Emma's life. Lucien worked at his computer, his fingers flying across the keyboard with grim efficiency. Natalyia made herself comfortable in one of the guest chairs, scrolling through her phone like this was a routine business meeting. Her 3 men stood sentinel, Marcus by the door, the other 2 flanking the windows. Emma sat in her chair, hands visible, her mind racing through scenarios that all ended badly. Mrs. Chen tried to enter once, knocked with her usual precision, and Lucien's voice stopped her before the door opened. Cancel everything today. I'm not to be disturbed. Sir, you have canceled. All of it. I'll explain later. Emma heard Mrs. Chen's footsteps retreat and wondered if the older woman knew something was wrong, if she'd called Dante, if help was coming. But hours passed and no one came. At the 3-hour mark, Natalyia's phone rang. She answered in rapid Italian, her expression flickering through irritation to something sharper. When she hung up, she was frowning. "Problem?" Lucian asked without looking up. "My associate in the Caymans is being difficult about the routing. I need to make a call, give him the secondary authorization." She stood, moved toward the window for better signal, turning her back to the room. It was the opening Emma had been waiting for. She caught Lucien's eye, saw him give the smallest shake of his head. "Don't." But she was done sitting still while her life got negotiated around her. Her hand shot out, grabbed the ceramic coffee mug on the desk, and hurled it at Marcus with everything she had. It caught him in the temple, exploded into shards, and he went down hard. The room erupted. Emma dove for the desk drawer as the second gunman raised his weapon. She heard Lucien shout her name, felt the air crack as a shot went wide. Her fingers closed around the compact 9mm just as hands grabbed her from behind, yanking her backward. She twisted, Marco's training kicking in on instinct, drove her elbow into ribs, and heard a satisfying grunt. The grip loosened enough for her to spin, bring the gun up, and put 2 shots center mass exactly like she'd been taught. The gunman dropped. Time slowed to a crawl. Emma's ears rang from the gunfire. Smoke curled from her weapon. The man she'd shot, God, she'd killed him. She'd actually killed someone. Stared at the ceiling with empty eyes. Then time snapped back into brutal speed. The third gunman had his weapon trained on Lucien, who'd somehow produced his own gun and had it aimed at Natalyia. Mexican standoff, everyone frozen, everyone breathing too hard. Natalyia broke the silence with a laugh that sounded like breaking glass. "Well, that was unexpected. The little mouse has teeth." "Let her go," Lucien said, his voice deadly calm. "Call off your man, take your money, and leave." "I don't think so. See, the deal just changed." Natalya's eyes glittered with something manic. "She just killed one of my people. That requires compensation." "Name your price." "Her," Natalyia smiled. "She comes with me. Insurance policy. When the money clears and I'm safely out of the country, I'll let her go. You have my word." "Your word means nothing. It's the only currency you have right now." She gestured to her remaining gunmen. "Marcus is dead, Tommy's bleeding out. Yes, I can see him breathing, but he won't last long. And it's just me and Vincent now. Vincent's very good at his job. He's also very loyal. If I give the word, he puts a bullet in your brain before you can blink. So here's what's going to happen. Emma comes with me. The money transfers. Everyone lives. Or you refuse, we all die in this office. And your brother gets to identify your body. Your choice." Emma's hand was shaking so badly she nearly dropped the gun. "Lucien, don't. Put it down." "Emma." "No." "That's an order." "I don't care." She kept the gun trained on Natalyia, even though Vincent's barrel was now aimed at her instead of Lucien. "She's lying. The second I get in a car with her, I'm dead. We both know it." "You don't know that." "Yes, I do. And so do you. You're just too busy trying to save me to see it." Natalyia clapped slowly. "Oh, this is delicious. You actually care about her. After all your speeches about never again, about keeping distance, you've gone and fallen for your secretary. Papa would be so disappointed." "Shut up." Lucien's gun hand was steady, but Emma could see the war happening behind his eyes. Save her or lose everything. Keep her alive now or risk her dying later. The math was impossible. Emma made the choice for him. She turned the gun on herself, pressed it under her own jaw, and watched every face in the room go pale. "New deal," she said, her voice surprisingly steady. "Natalyia takes her money and leaves. Lucien lives. I don't blow my own brains out. Everyone walks away." "Emma, don't," Lucien started. "Shut up. This isn't your call anymore." She met Natalya's eyes. "You want leverage? Here it is. You kill him, I pull the trigger. You hurt him, I pull the trigger. You don't take the money and leave in the next 60 seconds, I pull the trigger and you get nothing." Natalya's smile faded. "You're bluffing. Try me. I've got nothing left to lose. My old life's gone. My family's dead. The only thing I had worth protecting was him, and you're trying to take that away. So either we all lose, or you take the win you already have and go." "She's right," Lucien said quietly. "Take the money, Natalyia. It's more than you planned for, more than you deserve. But take it and go, or this ends with everyone bleeding out on expensive carpet. Vincent looked to Natalyia, waiting for orders. Emma watched her calculate, saw the exact moment she decided that $50 million was worth more than revenge. Fine. She pulled out her phone, typed something, then showed the screen to Lucien. Transfer to this account. Full amount. Do it now. Lucien moved to his computer, never taking his eyes off Vincent, and executed the transfer with one hand while keeping his gun trained with the other. Emma stood frozen, the barrel cold against her skin, her finger trembling on the trigger, hoping Natalyia couldn't see how close she was to actually doing it. The computer chimed. Transfer complete. Natalyia checked her phone, smiled. Pleasure doing business with you, darling. Vincent, we're leaving. What about Tommy? Vincent gestured to the wounded man. Leave him. He knew the risks. She moved toward the door, stopped next to Emma. You're either the bravest or the dumbest woman I've ever met. Either way, you won't last 6 months in his world. When you die, and you will, remember I gave you a chance to walk away. She left, Vincent backing out after her, his gun the last thing to disappear through the doorway. The moment they were gone, Emma's legs gave out. Lucien caught her before she hit the floor, pried the gun from her shaking hands, and pulled her against his chest. She could feel his heart hammering, smell the copper tang of fear sweat beneath his cologne. You stupid, reckless! His voice cracked. You could have died. So could you. That's different. No, it's not. Emma pulled back enough to see his face, saw tears he was too proud to let fall. You don't get to sacrifice yourself for me and then be mad when I do the same. That's not how this works. There are no rules for how this works. We're making it up as we go and hoping we don't get killed. Then we make up rules that keep both of us alive. Deal? He kissed her instead of answering, hard and desperate, and Emma kissed him back with shaking hands and the taste of adrenaline on her tongue. They broke apart when Dante burst through the door with 4 armed men, all of them looking ready to wage war. What the hell happened? Mrs. Chen said. He stopped, took in the bodies, the blood. Emma in Lucien's arms, and his face went white. Jesus Christ! Natalyia is alive, Lucien said flatly. She came for money. She got it. She left. End of story. That is not the end of the story. That's not even close to... Dante's eyes landed on Emma. Are you hurt? Emma shook her head, not trusting her voice. She killed one of them, Lucien said, and there was something like pride in his voice. Center mass, 2 shots, textbook. Dante looked at the body, then back at Emma. Marco taught you well. I'm going to throw up, Emma said, and then did exactly that, all over Lucien's expensive shoes. The next few hours blurred into controlled chaos. Dante's men cleaned up the bodies. Emma didn't ask where they went, didn't want to know. Mrs. Chen appeared with fresh clothes for both of them, her face carefully neutral as she helped Emma wash blood off her hands in the private bathroom. The police never came. No ambulance, no investigators, no consequences except the ones they'd carry inside. By 7 p.m., the office looked normal again. New carpet where Tommy had bled out. Fresh paint where Marcus's head had left a mark. All evidence erased like it had never happened. Lucien sent everyone home except Emma. They sat in his office, the scene of the crime, though you'd never know it, and stared at each other across the desk that had witnessed too much. 50 million, Emma said finally. That's a lot of money. It's nothing. I can make it back. He rubbed his face, suddenly looking older. I can't make you back. I'm not dead. You almost were. Multiple times, because of me. Because of Natalyia. Because of choices she made 7 years ago that had nothing to do with me. Emma leaned forward. Don't do this. Don't start pulling away because you're scared of losing me. I already lost you once today. When you put that gun to your head, his voice broke. I've never been that terrified in my life. Not when my father died. Not when I thought Natalyia was gone. Watching you ready to pull that trigger, knowing I couldn't stop you. It broke something in me. Good. He looked up, startled. Good? You needed to break. You've been holding everything so tight, convinced that control was the only thing keeping you safe. But control is an illusion, Lucien. Life is chaos. People make choices. Bad things happen to good people. You can't prevent all of it, no matter how many guns you have or how much power you wield. then what's the point? The point is you choose who you break for, who you fight for, who you love even when it's terrifying. Emma stood, moved around the desk, and took his face in her hands. I choose you. Broken parts and all. Do you choose me? He pulled her into his lap, buried his face in her neck, and she felt wetness against her skin that she pretended not to notice. I choose you, he whispered. God help us both. I choose you. They stayed like that until the city lights came on and the office grew dark around them, two people clinging to each other in the aftermath of violence, hoping love was enough to survive what came next. It wasn't. The call came at 3 a.m. Emma jerked awake in Lucian's bed. She'd been staying at his penthouse since the apartment felt too exposed, and grabbed for her phone. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. Hello? Emma Hale? A woman's voice, professional, cold. This is Special Agent Sarah Chen with the FBI. I'm calling to inform you that Lucian Varese has been arrested on multiple federal charges, including racketeering, money laundering, and conspiracy to commit murder. You're also wanted for questioning regarding your role in his organization. I suggest you turn yourself in voluntarily. We're outside your building. The phone slipped from Emma's hand. Lucian was already moving, pulling on clothes with grim efficiency. How many agents? Emma looked out the window, saw 3 black SUVs and at least a dozen people in FBI windbreakers. A lot. Natalyia. He said the name like a curse. She released everything. The deal meant nothing. What do we do? He grabbed a go bag from his closet, pre-packed, she realized, always ready for this moment, and handed her a second one. We run. They'll find us. You know they will. Probably, but I'm not going down without a fight, and I'm not leaving you behind. He pulled out his phone, made a call. Dante, they're here. Activate the contingency. Get Mama and Sophia somewhere safe. Don't argue. Just do it. Pounding on the door, followed by a voice amplified by a megaphone. FBI, we have a warrant. Open the door. Lucian grabbed Emma's hand, pulled her toward the bedroom. There's a service elevator. Leads to the parking garage. We have maybe 90 seconds before they breach. They ran. The elevator felt like a coffin, descending with agonizing slowness, while above them came the sound of the front door splintering. Emma's heart was in her throat, her hands clutching the go-bag like it could save her. Where are we going? She asked. Anywhere but here. I have safe houses, cash, passports. We can make it to Canada by morning, then overseas. I have contacts in... Lucien! She stopped him. I can't. The elevator shuddered to a halt. The doors opened onto the parking garage, empty except for his car waiting in the reserved spot. What do you mean you can't? I mean I can't run. I can't spend the rest of my life looking over my shoulder, hiding in safe houses, becoming the thing they're accusing me of being. Emma's eyes filled with tears she'd been holding back for hours. If I run with you, I'm guilty. I become part of this. And I can't. I won't. They'll destroy you. You heard her. Questioning means interrogation. They'll try to flip you against me, and when you don't, they'll charge you as an accessory. You'll go to prison, Emma. Real prison, not some minimum security resort. Then I go to prison. But I do it with my integrity intact. She touched his face, memorized the feel of his skin under her palm. I love you, but I won't become you. I won't sacrifice who I am to save us. Above them, footsteps echoed. Shouts. They had seconds. Come with me, Lucian begged. Please. I'll do anything. Change anything. We can start over somewhere they'll never find us. You know that's not true. They'll always find you. And when they do, they'll use me to break you. Emma stepped out of the elevator, put the go-bag down. Run. Be smart. Use the empire you built to disappear. But let me go. I can't. You have to. The footsteps were closer now, flashlight beams sweeping the garage. Lucian made a sound like something dying, grabbed her face, and kissed her with everything he had, grief and love and goodbye. When he pulled away, his eyes were wet. I'll come back for you. Don't. Move on. Find someone who can live in your world without losing themselves. There is no one else. There's only you. FBI, hands where we can see them. Lucien got in the car, started the engine. The garage door was already opening, triggered by some remote signal. He looked at her one last time through the window, and Emma saw 7 years of loneliness staring back. Then he was gone, the car screaming out into the night, and Emma was on her knees with her hands behind her head while a dozen agents swarmed around her shouting orders. They zip-tied her wrist, read her rights, hauled her to her feet, and pushed her toward a waiting SUV. She didn't cry, didn't fight. Just let them take her, because this was the choice she'd made. Love him or be him. She couldn't do both. As the SUV pulled away from the building, Emma caught a glimpse of herself in the window, face pale, eyes hollow, hands bound like a criminal. And she wondered if Lucian was right. If choosing integrity over love was bravery or just another kind of cowardice. The interrogation room was exactly like every crime show had promised. Gray walls, metal table, mirror that was obviously one-way glass. Emma sat in a chair that had been bolted to the floor and stared at her reflection, barely recognizing the woman looking back. Special Agent Sarah Chen sat across from her, a file folder open between them. She was maybe 40, Asian American, with the kind of sharp intelligence that missed nothing. You want to tell me how a Brooklyn waitress ends up working for one of the most dangerous crime bosses on the East Coast? Chen asked, her voice almost conversational. I needed a job. He was hiring. And you had no idea about his business activities? I had suspicions. But you stayed. I stayed. Chen leaned back, studying her. You know what I think? I think you're smarter than you're pretending to be. I think you knew exactly what Lucien Varese was, and you stayed anyway because the money was good and the risk felt manageable. Until today, when the risk became very, very real. Emma said nothing. We have evidence linking you to at least 3 meetings with known organized crime figures. We have you on security footage in the building when Vincent Costa was tortured. We have phone records showing dozens of calls to offshore accounts and shell companies. Chen opened the folder, slid photos across the table. And we have this. The photo showed Emma, gun in hand, standing over a body. Time-stamped today, taken from a camera she hadn't known existed. Self-defense, Emma said. Maybe. Or maybe you're exactly what you appear to be. Varese's accomplice, his partner, maybe his lover, based on the way you two looked at each other in that elevator footage. Emma's stomach dropped. They'd been watching. Cameras everywhere. Here's what I'm offering, Chen continued. Full immunity, witness protection, a new life somewhere far from New York. All you have to do is testify against Varese. Tell us everything you know about his operations, his associates, his holdings. Help us dismantle the empire he built, and you walk away clean. And if I say no, then you go down with him. Conspiracy, accessory to murder, tax evasion, money laundering. We'll add charges until the stack reaches the ceiling, and you'll spend the next 20 years in federal prison. Is he worth that? Emma thought about Lucian's hands on her face, his voice when he said he chose her, the way he'd looked driving away like she was ripping his heart out through his chest. I want a lawyer. Chen's expression hardened. You're making a mistake. Probably, but it's my mistake to make. They left her alone after that. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time felt broken in the windowless room. Emma's wrists ached from the zip ties they'd finally cut off. Her throat was dry. Her head pounded. The door opened again and a man walked in. Expensive suit, silver hair, the kind of face that belonged in boardrooms and courtrooms. Miss Hale, I'm Richard Morrison. Lucien Varese has retained my services on your behalf. Emma's heart lurched. He got away? That's not information I'm at liberty to discuss. What I can tell you is that you're being released on your own recognizance pending formal charges. The FBI doesn't have enough to hold you beyond questioning, and I've made it clear that further interrogation without counsel present would be problematic for their case. I don't understand. Morrison smiled thinly. You're free to go, for now. I suggest you use the time wisely. Here's my card. Call me before you speak to any federal agents, police officers, or journalists. Don't post on social media. Don't leave the state. And for God's sake, don't contact Varese directly. He left, and moments later, a different agent led Emma through a maze of corridors to a side exit where the press couldn't see her. The door opened onto a street she didn't recognize, early morning light making everything look washed out and surreal. A black car waited at the curb. The back door opened. Dante sat inside. Get in, he said. Emma climbed in on autopilot. The door closed and the car pulled away from the federal building, heading into traffic that was just starting to build with the morning commute. He's gone, Dante said without preamble. Somewhere they won't find him. He wants you to know he's safe. Did he tell you to tell me that? Or are you improvising? Both. He also said, Dante's voice caught. He said he loves you, that he's sorry, and that you made the right choice. Emma's vision blurred. Where is he really? I don't know. He didn't tell me. Didn't tell anyone. That's how this works. The fewer people who know, the better. Dante handed her a phone. New, prepaid, untraceable. He'll call when it's safe, could be days, could be months. In the meantime, you need to decide what you're going to do. What are my options? Testify against him, save yourself, or keep quiet and hope Morrison can get you off on lack of evidence. Either way, your life as Emma Hale is over. The FBI won't stop digging, and neither will the families who think you know too much. So I'm trapped. Welcome to the family business. Dante's smile was bitter. For what it's worth, you did something no one else has managed in 7 years. You made him feel again, made him want more than just power and control. That's either a miracle or a curse, and I honestly don't know which. The car stopped outside a hotel Emma didn't recognize. Dante handed her a key card. Room 412. It's paid for a month under a name that's not yours. There's clothes, cash, and a laptop inside. Stay there. Stay quiet. And whatever you do, don't trust anyone who says they can help you. In this world, help comes with strings attached. Emma took the key, started to get out, then stopped. Does he really think I made the right choice? Or is that just something he told you to say so I don't fall apart? Dante's expression softened. He thinks you're the bravest person he's ever met, and he hates himself for putting you in a position where bravery was necessary. She got out of the car and watched it drive away, taking the last connection to Lucian with it. The hotel room was generic, anonymous, the kind of place where people disappeared into. Emma stood in the middle of it, still wearing yesterday's clothes, still smelling like blood and fear, and let herself finally break. She sobbed into her hands, her whole body shaking with the force of it. Cried for the girl who'd walked into that interview 6 weeks ago, thinking the worst that could happen was rejection. Cried for Lucian, wherever he was, running from consequences that would chase him until the day he died. Cried for the impossible choice she'd made, and the life she'd lost, and the future that had turned to ash. When the tears stopped, she was empty. She showered, washing away the last 24 hours, and found the clothes Dante had mentioned, jeans, sweaters, basics in her size. Someone had been paying attention. The cash was in a shoebox, bundled hundreds that added up to $20,000. The laptop was clean, no history, just a browser, and an encrypted email account with one message waiting. From an address she didn't recognize, sent 10 minutes ago. I'm sorry. I'm safe. Don't look for me. Destroy this after reading. I love you more than I thought possible. You deserved better than me. L. Emma read it 3 times, memorized every word, then deleted it like he'd asked. She spent the next 2 weeks in that hotel room, venturing out only for food, watching the news cycle churn through Lucian's disappearance. The FBI held press conferences promising his capture. The families he'd done business with scrambled to cover their own exposure. Natalyia gave one interview, blonde and beautiful and lying through her teeth, claiming she'd been held captive for 7 years and had only recently escaped. No one believed her, but no one could prove otherwise. Emma's phone rang exactly once. Unknown number. She answered before her brain could stop her. Don't say anything, Lucian's voice, distorted slightly like he was using a scrambler. Just listen. I'm where I need to be. Morrison will keep you safe. The evidence against you is circumstantial. If you don't talk, they can't make it stick. Do you understand? Yes. Good. Emma. He paused, and she heard him breathing, imagined she could feel it against her skin. I need you to forget me. Move on. Find someone who can give you the normal life you deserve. Promise me. I can't promise that. Please. You don't get to disappear and then tell me how to feel. That's not fair. Nothing about this is fair, his voice cracked. But I need to know you're going to be okay. That I didn't destroy you. You didn't destroy me. You saved me. You just don't see it yet. Silence stretched between them, filled with everything they couldn't say. I have to go, he said finally. I love you. The line went dead before she could say it back. Emma sat on the hotel bed, staring at the phone until the screen went dark, and knew with absolute certainty that this wasn't over. It was just the end of the beginning. And somewhere in the world, Lucien Varese was making plans that would either save them both or condemn them to separate versions of hell. She'd made her choice in that elevator. Now she had to live with the consequences. Or die trying. 3 months. 3 months of living in hotel rooms with fake names and cash that dwindled despite Emma's careful rationing. 3 months of Morrison's weekly calls assuring her the FBI's case was falling apart, that without Lucien they had nothing concrete, that she just needed to wait a little longer. 3 months of silence from the one person whose voice she'd give anything to hear. Emma learned to live small, kept her head down, dyed her hair from brown to black, then to red, then back to brown. Wore sunglasses even on cloudy days, memorized exit routes from every building she entered, slept with the gun Marco had given her under her pillow, and woke up 3 times a night reaching for it. She'd become exactly what Lucien had tried to prevent, a ghost, running from shadows. The call came on a Tuesday, not from Lucien, from Dante, his voice tight with something that sounded like controlled panic. "Where are you?" Emma looked around the diner where she'd been nursing coffee for 2 hours, watching the street. "Brooklyn, why?" "Stay there. Don't move. I'm 10 minutes out." He hung up before she could ask questions. He arrived in 9 minutes, looking like he hadn't slept in days. His usual easy smile was gone, replaced with the kind of grim determination Emma had only seen once before, the day they'd found the bodies in Lucien's office. "Natalya's dead," he said without preamble, sliding into the booth across from her. Emma's coffee cup stopped halfway to her mouth. "What?" "They found her in a penthouse in Miami. Professional hit. 2 shots to the head, no signs of forced entry. Whoever did it knew what they were doing." "Lucien." "That's what everyone is going to think. FBI's already issued a statement connecting it to his flight from justice. They're calling him a fugitive and a murderer. There's a manhunt. Federal, international. They've frozen every account, seized every property, pressured every contact." Dante's hands were shaking. "Emma, they're closing in. And when they find him, they're not taking him alive." Her stomach dropped. "Do you know where he is?" "No. And if I did, I couldn't tell you. But I know he didn't kill her." "How do you know?" "Because he called me 2 hours ago. From somewhere in Europe, based on the connection. He was trying to warn me that something was coming, that Natalyia had made enemies beyond just him. He sounded..." Dante stopped, swallowed hard. "He sounded scared. And my brother doesn't scare easy." Emma's mind raced. "If he didn't kill her, who did? That's the question, and the answer's probably going to get us all killed." He pulled out a phone, not his regular one, a burner, and slid it across the table. "He's going to call this number at 8 p.m. tonight. He wants to talk to you. I'm supposed to make sure you're somewhere safe when he does." Define safe. Somewhere the FBI isn't listening. Somewhere his enemies can't find you. Somewhere you can make a choice about what happens next without a gun to your head. Emma picked up the phone, felt its weight in her palm. "What choice?" "Whether you want to help him come in from the cold, or whether you want to keep running until one of you dies." Dante's eyes were bloodshot, desperate. "Because that's where this ends, Emma. Either he surrenders and spends his life in prison, or he keeps running and someone eventually puts a bullet in him. Those are the only options left. There's a third option." "What's that?" "We find out who really killed Natalyia. Prove Lucien didn't do it. Clear his name enough that surrender doesn't mean execution." Dante laughed, but it sounded broken. "You think the FBI cares about the truth? They want a conviction. They want to make an example. Lucien Varese brought to justice, case closed, everyone goes home feeling safe. The truth is irrelevant." "Then we make it relevant." Emma stood, grabbed the phone. "Where do I need to be at 8? Dante gave her an address in Red Hook, an industrial building that used to house one of Lucien's shipping operations before the Fed seized it. "There's a loft on the 3rd floor. It's off the grid. No cameras, no listening devices. I'll have Marcus waiting outside." "Marcus is still alive?" "Marcus is very hard to kill. You'll be safe there." Emma nodded, started to leave, then turned back. "Dante, does he know? About Natalyia being dead?" "Not yet. I wanted to tell him in person, but that's not happening, so you're going to have to do it." Dante's voice cracked. "And Emma? When he finds out, he's going to want blood. He's going to want to hunt down whoever did this and make them suffer. You're the only person who might be able to stop him from throwing his life away on revenge. What if I don't want to stop him? Then we're all dead. Because the second he surfaces for vengeance, they'll find him. And this time, there won't be any running. The Red Hook building looked abandoned from the outside. Broken windows, graffiti-covered walls, the kind of place addicts used as a shooting gallery. But the third floor was pristine, a loft space with clean lines and minimal furniture, clearly maintained despite appearing derelict. Marcus waited by the stairs, nodded once when he saw her. Miss Hale, good to see you're still breathing. You too. I thought Natalyia's men killed you. They tried. I'm stubborn. He gestured to the loft. Everything you need is inside. Food, water, first aid kit if things go sideways. I'll be outside. Anyone comes up those stairs who isn't Dante, I'll handle it. Emma believed him. The phone rang at exactly 8 p.m. She answered on the first ring, her hand shaking so badly she nearly dropped it. Lucien. Emma. His voice was rough, like he'd been screaming or smoking or both. I didn't think you'd answer. Where are you? Somewhere cold. Doesn't matter. I can't stay anywhere long enough for it to matter. She heard wind in the background, the cry of seagulls, somewhere coastal. Dante said you were safe. Are you? As safe as I can be while running from the FBI and whoever else wants me dead. Lucien, there's something you need to know. I know. Natalyia's dead. I saw the news. Emma closed her eyes. I'm sorry. Don't be. She stopped being the woman I loved 7 years ago. The woman who died in Miami was a stranger wearing her face. His voice was empty, hollowed out. But everyone thinks I did it, which means I can't come back, can't clear my name, can't ever stop running, unless we prove who really killed her. There is no we, Emma. You're out. You've been out since the day you chose integrity over me. That was the right call. The smart call. Now you need to follow through, testify against me if they ask, take the immunity deal, and forget I ever existed. I already told you I can't promise that. Then I'm telling you as someone who loves you, let me go, please. I've destroyed enough lives. I won't destroy yours too. Emma's throat was tight. You're not destroying my life. You're the only thing keeping me alive. That's not love. That's Stockholm Syndrome. Don't you dare tell me what I feel. I watched you break a man's bones to protect your empire. I documented torture. I killed someone in your office. And I'd do it all again because the alternative was losing you. So stop trying to push me away like some noble sacrifice and tell me what you need. Silence stretched so long she thought he'd hung up. Then, I need you to trust me one more time. Can you do that? What are you planning? Something stupid, dangerous, probably suicidal. She heard him take a breath. There's a gala in 3 days, the Castellano Foundation annual fundraiser at the plaza. Every major player on the East Coast will be there. Old money, new money, legitimate businesses fronting for illegitimate ones, including the people who wanted Natalyia dead. You're going to walk into a room full of your enemies. I'm going to make them an offer they can't refuse. A deal that gets me out from under the FBI's microscope and keeps you safe. But I need someone on the inside. Someone they don't know to watch for. Someone who can be my eyes while I negotiate. Emma's heart was pounding. You want me at the gala. I want you to wear a dress that costs more than your old apartment, drink champagne with people who'd kill you without blinking, and record every conversation that might tell us who ordered the hit on Natalyia. Dante will get you an invitation. Sophia will provide a cover story. And when it's over, win or lose, you walk away and never look back. And what about you? I either walk out in handcuffs or I don't walk out at all. Either way, you're free. I don't want to be free. I want to be with you. Emma, no. You don't get to make this decision for me. Not anymore. If you're walking into a death trap, then I'm walking in beside you. That's non-negotiable. She could almost see him closing his eyes, fighting with himself. You're going to get yourself killed. Then we'll die together. At least it'll make a good story. He laughed, broken and desperate. You're the most stubborn woman I've ever met. You're the most infuriating man I've ever loved. We're even. Okay. But we do this my way. You follow my instructions exactly. No improvising, no heroics. The second things go sideways, you run. Promise me. I promise. You're lying. I know. Another silence. this one almost gentle. I'll see you in 3 days. The plaza. Midnight. Main ballroom. There's a balcony on the north side. Wait there, I'll find you. Lucienne, I love you. I love you too, more than I should, more than is safe. He hung up before she could respond. Emma sat in the empty loft holding a dead phone and started planning for war. And the dress Sophia provided was midnight blue silk that clung to Emma's body like a second skin, with a slit-up one thigh that felt obscene and a neckline that showed more than she was comfortable with, paired with heels that added 4 inches to her height and made her feel like she was walking on knives. She barely recognized herself in the mirror. "You look dangerous," Sophia said, adjusting Emma's hair into an elegant updo that hid the small earpiece they'd threaded through. "That's good. Dangerous women survive rooms like this." Emma touched the earpiece, so small it was invisible beneath her hair. "And this connects to?" "Dante. He'll be monitoring from a van outside. If you get into trouble, say the word orchid and he'll pull the fire alarm. You'll have maybe 90 seconds to get out before security locks the building down." "What's Lucian's exit strategy?" Sophia's expression went carefully blank. "I don't think he has one. I think he's planning to make his deal or die trying. Then we'll make sure it's the first option." Sophia handed her a small clutch purse, black to match the shoes. "There's a recording device inside. Looks like a compact mirror, but it's running continuously. Anything said within 10 feet gets captured. Also a panic button that alerts both Dante and our legal team. And this," she pulled out a thin silver bracelet, "tracking device. We'll know where you are every second." Emma slid it on, felt it lock into place with a soft click. "I'm starting to feel like a spy." "You're a civilian walking into a war zone. The spy shit is just to keep you alive long enough to get out." Sophia's voice softened. "He really loves you, you know. He'd never admit it, but he's been different since you came into his life. Less cold, more human." "Is that a compliment?" "It's an observation. And a warning. Love makes people stupid, makes them take risks they shouldn't take, make promises they can't keep. If you're doing this because you think it'll end with you two riding off into the sunset, you're going to be disappointed." Emma met her eyes. "I'm doing this because the alternative is living with regret for the rest of my life, however long that is." "Then good luck. You're going to need it." The plaza was a fortress of elegance, all marble columns and crystal chandeliers and security guards trying to look invisible. Emma's invitation was checked twice before she made it through the doors, and she felt eyes on her the moment she entered the ballroom. The room was massive, easily 300 people milling around in tuxedos and designer gowns, drinking champagne that cost more per bottle than Emma used to make in a week. An orchestra played something classical and forgettable. Waiters circulated with trays of food that looked like art, and everywhere she looked, Emma saw faces she'd memorized from Lucien's files, criminals and politicians, and the wealthy elite who funded both. She grabbed a glass of champagne from a passing waiter, more for the prop than the alcohol, and started circulating. The conversations were exactly what she expected: vapid small talk masking ruthless business dealings, compliments that doubled as threats, the kind of polite warfare that happened when violence would be unseemly. Dante's voice crackled in her ear, barely audible beneath the music. "I've got you. North Wall, 10 o'clock. 3 men in dark suits talking to a woman in red. That's Carmine Ricci and his associates. Stay close. If anyone mentions Natalyia, I need to hear it." Emma drifted closer, pretending to admire a painting while the recording device in her purse captured every word. "Shame about the Corso woman," one of the suits was saying. "Though I can't say anyone's surprised. She made enemies." "Vorace enemies," Carmine said, his voice like gravel. "Though it seems the man's gone to ground. Coward. Or smart. FBI's been sniffing around everyone he ever did business with. I've had 3 audits in the last month." The woman in red sounded bitter. "Whatever deal he made, I hope it was worth burning every bridge on the East Coast. There's talk he's planning something, reaching out to old contacts, trying to buy his way back into legitimacy." Carmine laughed. "No such thing. Once you're in for life. He knows that, which means he's either planning to die on his own terms or he's stupid enough to think he can negotiate." Emma's blood ran cold. They knew. Somehow they knew Lucian was coming. She moved away before they noticed her eavesdropping, her heart hammering. Into the earpiece, barely a whisper.
Dante. They know he's here. Someone tipped them off. Copy that. Keep moving. I'll try to reach him. Warn him off.
But Emma knew Lucien wouldn't be warned off. He'd made up his mind days ago, and nothing short of death would change it. She continued through the ballroom, recording conversations, gathering intelligence that Morrison could maybe use to build a defense. An hour passed, then 2. Midnight approached, and Emma found herself drifting toward the north balcony, her stomach tight with anticipation and dread. The balcony was empty, overlooking Central Park, bathed in streetlight and shadow. The city stretched out below, a million lives unaware that up here, in this gilded cage, empires were negotiated and vengeance planned. Footsteps behind her. Emma turned, her hand instinctively moving toward the purse where the panic button waited. Lucien stepped out of the shadows. He looked different, thinner, harder, with a beard he'd never worn before and eyes that had seen too much. But it was him, unmistakably, and Emma's breath caught in her throat. "You came," he said, his voice rough. "You asked. I didn't think you would." "I know." She moved toward him, closed the distance between them, and felt his arms come around her like he was afraid she'd disappear. "You look terrible. 3 months on the run will do that." He pulled back, touched her face like he was memorizing it. "You look beautiful and terrified. What happened?" "They know you're here. Someone told them you were planning to make contact tonight. Lucien, this is a trap." "I know." Emma's stomach dropped. "You know?" "I counted on it. The only way to smoke out Natalya's killer was to make myself bait." His smile was bitter. "Whoever wanted her dead also wants me out of the picture. When I show myself tonight, they'll make a move. And when they do, we'll have them." "That's insane. You're going to get yourself killed." "Probably. But I'm done running, Emma. I'm done hiding while the people I care about suffer because of me. So tonight, I'm ending this. One way or another." "And what am I supposed to do? Watch you walk into a room full of people who want you dead and hope you're smart enough to survive it?" "No. You're supposed to leave right now, before the shooting starts. Because it will start, Emma. The moment I walk back into that ballroom, someone's going to try to kill me. And I can't protect you if I'm bleeding out on the floor. Then don't walk into the ballroom. Come with me. We'll find another way."
"There is no other way. I've run every scenario. This is the only play that doesn't end with you in prison or dead in an alley." He kissed her forehead, gentle and final. "Go. Please, let me do this one thing right." Emma grabbed his face, forced him to look at her. "Listen to me. I didn't survive torture and FBI interrogations and 3 months of running just to watch you commit suicide by gangster. If you're doing this, I'm doing it with you. We walk in together, or we don't walk in at all." "Emma, no. You promised me we were in this together. You don't get to break that promise because you're scared of losing me." "I'm already lost, Lucien. The only question is whether we're lost together or alone." She saw him break. Saw the exact moment his control shattered, and the man underneath, the one who'd mourned Natalyia, who'd built walls to keep from feeling, who'd fallen in love despite every instinct screaming not to, finally surfaced. "Okay," he whispered. "Okay, together. But you stay behind me, and if I tell you to run, I'll run. I promise." This time she wasn't lying. They walked back into the ballroom side by side, and the room went silent. Every conversation stopped mid-sentence. Every head turned. The orchestra stuttered to a halt, and in the sudden quiet, Emma heard her own heartbeat thundering in her ears. Carmine Ricci stood in the center of the room, a glass of champagne in one hand and a smile on his face that didn't reach his eyes. "Lucien Verres. I'd heard rumors you'd gone soft, but I didn't expect you to be this stupid." Lucien's voice was steady, carrying across the ballroom with the kind of authority that made people listen. "I'm here to make a deal, Carmine. One that benefits everyone in this room." "What kind of deal?" "The kind where I give you access to every offshore account, every shell company, every dirty secret I've accumulated in 15 years running this city. In exchange, you leave Emma Hale alone. You tell the FBI I acted alone. And you let me disappear without sending every hitman on the East Coast after me." Carmine laughed. "And why would we agree to that? We've already got access to half your holdings. The Fed sees the rest. You've got nothing left to bargain with. I've got insurance, documentation on every deal this syndicate has made since my father's time. Names, dates, wire transfers,
Buried so deep that even if I die, it surfaces, automatically, sent to every federal agency and news outlet in the country. Lucian pulled out a phone, held it up. All I have to do is miss a check-in, and the whole house of cards collapses. Everyone in this room goes down. Except Emma. She's off limits. That's the deal. The silence that followed was suffocating. Then Carmine set down his champagne glass, and the room exploded into motion. Men pulled guns from shoulder holsters. Women screamed and scattered. The orchestra fled their instruments. And Emma found herself yanked behind Lucien as he produced a weapon seemingly from nowhere and fired 3 shots in rapid succession. Ceiling, chandelier, wall. Not killing shots, warning shots. "Everyone stop," Lucien commanded, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Or I drop this phone and we all die in prison." The movement froze. 24 guns trained on him, and him alone, his finger on a trigger while his other hand held Emma's wrist so tight it hurt. Carmine smiled, cold and reptilian. "You're bluffing. Try me."
I don't think I will. See, I know you, Lucien. Known you since you were a kid following your father around, learning the business. And I know your weakness has always been the same. You care too much about the wrong people. That girl behind you, she's your weak spot. And as long as she's breathing, you won't risk bringing this empire down. Lucien's grip on Emma's wrist tightened. Don't.
"Too late." Carmine gestured, and one of his men moved behind Emma, pressed a gun to her spine. "Here's my counteroffer. You drop the phone. You drop the insurance. You disappear like we both know you're going to. And maybe, I let your girl live long enough to testify against you. But probably not." Emma felt the cold metal against her back and forced herself to breathe, forced herself not to panic. In her ear, Dante's voice was screaming, "Say Orchid, Emma, say it now." But she couldn't speak, couldn't think past the pressure of the gun and Lucien's hand on her wrist and the knowledge that they'd run out of options. Then Lucien did the last thing she expected. He smiled. "You're right, Carmine. I do care too much. It's my fatal flaw. Always has been." He released Emma's wrist, held both hands out to his sides. "But see, you made one critical mistake. You assumed Emma was the weak link, the civilian, the liability." He looked at her, and his eyes held something that might have been pride, or apology, or both. "Now," he said softly. Emma drove her elbow backward into the gunman's solar plexus exactly like Yuki had taught her, felt him double over, and grabbed the gun from his hand before he could recover. She spun, put 2 rounds into his leg, non-fatal, just disabling, and dropped to a crouch as Lucien opened fire over her head. The ballroom erupted into true chaos. Gunfire echoed off marble, glass shattered, people dove for cover, and Emma stayed low, her training finally kicking in past the terror, as Lucien moved like violence incarnate, taking out Carmine's men with surgical precision. 4 down, 6, 8. Then Carmine himself, pulling a weapon from inside his jacket, aiming not at Lucien but at Emma. She saw it happening in slow motion, saw the barrel swing toward her, saw Lucien's face go white, saw him move, impossibly fast, putting himself between her and the bullet. The shot rang out. Lucien staggered, blood blooming across his white shirt. Emma screamed, caught him as he fell, and the world narrowed to his face, pale, shocked, blood at the corner of his mouth. "Run!" he gasped. "No." "Emma..." "Shut up. Stay with me." She pressed her hands to the wound, felt blood pour between her fingers, hot and slick. "Dante, I need help. He's been shot. I need an ambulance." More gunfire. The sound of sirens outside, the FBI, finally arriving drawn by the chaos. Carmine was shouting orders, trying to organize a retreat, but his men were scattering like roaches in light. Dante burst onto the balcony with Marcus and 3 others, all armed, all ready for war. He took one look at Lucien bleeding in Emma's arms and went white. "No, not like this. He needs a hospital." Emma's voice sounded strange, distant. "He's losing too much blood." "Hospital means federal custody. They'll arrest him the second he's stable." "I don't care. I'm not letting him die." Lucien's hand found hers, squeezed weakly. Listen, save your strength. You're going to be fine." "Manat." Blood bubbled at his lips. "Insurance wasn't real. Bluff." Emma's world stopped. "What?" "Had to make them think.
Had to. His eyes rolled back and she felt him go limp in her arms. No, no, Lucienne, stay with me, stay with me. Dante was on his phone shouting for medics, for backup. For something Emma couldn't process past the ringing in her ears and the feeling of Lucienne's blood soaking into her dress. The FBI swarmed in moments later. Agents everywhere, weapons drawn, shouting orders. Someone pulled Emma away from Lucienne's body, and she fought them, screaming, until strong hands restrained her and a voice in her ear said, "Miss Hale, you're under arrest." She watched them put Lucienne on a stretcher, watched paramedics work over him with desperate efficiency, watched them load him into an ambulance that disappeared into the night with sirens wailing. And she knew, with the terrible certainty that comes from loving someone too much, that she'd never see him alive again. The federal holding cell was concrete and fluorescent lights, and the smell of bleach failing to mask something worse underneath. Emma sat on a metal bench with her hands zip-tied behind her back, still wearing the ruined silk dress, still covered in blood that was drying to rust. They'd questioned her for 6 hours. Same questions, different agents, round and round until she wanted to scream. Where is Lucien Varese? What was he planning? Who else was involved? How long have you been working for him? She'd answered nothing. Asked for Morrison. Been denied. Asked about Lucien's condition. Been denied. Asked for basic human decency and been told terrorists don't get rights. She'd stopped talking after that. The door opened. Special Agent Chen walked in, looking tired and angry and maybe a little satisfied. Lucien Varese died in surgery 2 hours ago, she said without preamble. Massive internal bleeding. They couldn't save him, so that's one less criminal on the streets and one more case closed. Emma heard the words, understood them, refused to let them be real. You're lying. I'm not. I can show you the death certificate if you want, or you can keep pretending, keep protecting a dead man, and spend the next 20 years in prison for accessory to murder, conspiracy, weapons charges. We've got enough to bury you, Miss Hale. The only question is how deep you want that grave to be. Emma looked at her hands, at the dried blood caked under her fingernails, and felt something inside her crack. I want my lawyer. You're not getting one until you talk to me. Then I guess we're done here. Chen leaned forward, her eyes hard. He's dead, Emma. The man you threw your life away for is dead, and he left you with nothing but a murder charge and a destroyed future. So either you help yourself by giving me names, locations, everything you know about his organization, or you rot here. Your choice. Emma met her eyes, and when she spoke, her voice was eerily calm. He was the best thing that ever happened to me. And if loving him was a crime, then lock me up, because I'd do it all again. Chen stood, disgusted. Then you're as stupid as he was. Enjoy prison, Miss Hale. She left, and Emma was alone with the concrete and the blood and the knowledge that the only person who'd ever made her feel alive was gone. Except there was something wrong about Chen's delivery. Something too satisfied, too clean. Emma replayed the words in her head. Died in surgery. Not died at the plaza. Not died on the way to the hospital. Surgery meant he'd made it to the OR, meant he'd survived long enough to fight. And if he'd survived that long. The door opened again. But this time it wasn't Chen. It was Morrison, looking grim but not grief-stricken, carrying a briefcase and wearing the expression of a man about to wage war. Miss Hale, I apologize for the delay. Shall we discuss your release? Emma's heart, which had stopped beating hours ago, suddenly kicked back to life. Is he alive? Morrison's mouth curved into the smallest smile. That depends entirely on who's asking. And Emma knew with absolute certainty that nothing about this was over. It was just beginning. Morrison didn't wait for Emma to process his words. He opened the briefcase, pulled out documents that looked official enough to be real, and slid them across the metal table. As of 43 minutes ago, all charges against you have been dropped. Insufficient evidence. The ballroom shooting has been classified as self-defense during an active threat situation. You're a civilian caught in crossfire between organized crime factions. Traumatized, cooperative, no longer a person of interest. Emma stared at the papers, her brain struggling to catch up. How? Because the FBI got what they wanted, Carmine Ricci in custody, along with 14 of his associates. Enough evidence from tonight's incident to prosecute everyone in that ballroom.
and a narrative that doesn't require dragging a dead man through the courts. Morrison's expression was carefully neutral. Lucien Varese died a fugitive. That's the official story. Clean, satisfying, case closed. Except he's not dead. Officially, he is. The death certificate is real. The hospital records are real. What happened in that operating room is sealed under attorney-client privilege, which means I can neither confirm nor deny anything beyond what's in the public record. Emma's hands were shaking. Where is he? That's not a question I can answer. Morrison, Miss Hale. His voice softened, just slightly. You need to understand that the moment you walk out of this building, you're being watched. The FBI, Carmine's remaining associates, anyone with an interest in whether Lucien Varese is truly dead or just very good at playing possum. If you go looking for him, you lead them straight to him. Is that what you want? No. The word tasted like ash, but I can't not know if he's alive. Morrison reached into his jacket, pulled out a small envelope, and placed it on the table. Then don't look for him. Let him come to you, when it's safe. If it's ever safe. He stood, gathered his briefcase. There's a car waiting outside. It'll take you wherever you want to go. I suggest somewhere far from New York, somewhere you can start over without the ghosts of the last 4 months following you. He left before Emma could find words, and a guard came to cut her zip ties and escort her out of the cell. She grabbed the envelope, clutched it like a lifeline, and followed on numb legs through corridors that all looked the same until she emerged into gray morning light. A black sedan waited at the curb. Not Marcus this time. A driver she didn't recognize, professional and silent. Emma climbed into the back seat, opened the envelope with shaking hands, and found a single piece of paper. Lucien's handwriting, barely legible, like he'd written it while dying or close enough that it didn't matter. If you're reading this, Morrison did his job and you're free. I'm sorry it took this long. Sorry for everything I put you through. You deserve better than me. Better than this life, these choices, this ending. I don't know if I'll make it through surgery. The odds aren't great. But if I do, I'm disappearing. Really disappearing this time. No contact, no trail, nothing that can lead back to you. It's the only way to keep you safe. Don't look for me. Don't wait for me. Move on, Emma. Find someone who can give you the life you should have had. Fall in love with a man who doesn't carry bodies in his wake. Have the future I stole from you. If I survive, I'll carry you with me. Every sunrise, every decision, every moment I get that I don't deserve. You made me want to be better. I'm sorry I never figured out how. Burn this after reading. Trust no one. Live. L. Emma read it 3 times, tears blurring the words, then held her lighter to the corner and watched it burn. Watched the paper curl and blacken and turn to ash in her hands, taking his words with it. The driver's voice was gentle. Where to, miss? Emma stared out the window at the city waking up, cabs honking, people rushing to work, steam rising from subway grates. Normal lives, normal problems, a world that kept spinning regardless of who lived or died in its shadows. I don't know, she said finally. Somewhere I can breathe. He drove her to a small hotel in Vermont, 3 hours from the city, the kind of place that catered to ski tourists in winter and hikers in summer, and asked no questions the rest of the year. Emma checked in under a name Morrison had provided, climbed the stairs to a room with a view of mountains, and slept for 16 hours straight. When she woke, it was dark again, and her phone, her real phone, the one she'd left behind months ago, had 47 missed calls from numbers she didn't recognize and 1 voicemail from Dante. She played it with her heart in her throat. Emma, it's me. I can't tell you much, but he made it through. He's alive. Barely, but alive. And he's gone. I don't know where. He didn't tell me, didn't tell anyone, just disappeared the moment he could walk. Dante's voice cracked. He asked me to tell you that he meant every word he wrote, and that you should forget him, move on, be happy. A pause, then softer. But between you and me, I don't think he's ever going to forget you. And I think that's going to kill him slower than any bullet could. The voicemail ended, and Emma sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the phone, trying to decide if knowing he was alive made things better or worse. Worse, she decided. Because now she had to live with the fact that he was out there somewhere, breathing, existing, carrying her memory like a wound, and she couldn't reach him. The months that followed were a study in survival. Emma stayed in Vermont through winter,
took a job at a bookstore that paid cash and didn't ask about her past, and learned what it meant to be alone without being lonely. She read voraciously, novels, poetry, anything that took her out of her own head. She hiked the mountains until her legs ached and her lungs burned. She taught herself to cook meals for one and stopped setting 2 places at the table. Morrison called monthly to check in, always from a different number, always with the same message. No news, no threats, no reason to run. The FBI had closed their investigation. Carmine Ricci had been sentenced to life without parole. The syndicate families had scattered, rebuilding in the power vacuum Lucien's absence created. "You're safe," Morrison told her in March. "Officially and unofficially. You can go home if you want." But Emma didn't know where home was anymore. Dante visited once, in April, showing up at the bookstore with coffee and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "You look good," he said, and it was almost true. Emma had gained back the weight she'd lost running, let her hair grow out, stopped checking over her shoulder every 5 minutes. "You look tired," she countered. "It's been a hell of a year." He sat on the counter, swinging his legs like a kid. "The family's mostly legitimate now. Well, legitimate-ish. I'm running things while Mama terrorizes the younger cousins into getting real jobs. It's exhausting and boring and nothing like the old days." "Do you miss it?" "Sometimes. Mostly I miss him." Dante's voice went soft. "I know you can't ask and I can't tell you, but I thought you should know he's okay, wherever he is. He's alive and safe and probably miserable because that's just who he is." Emma's throat was tight. "Does he ask about me?" "Every time we talk, which isn't often and it's never for long, but yeah, he asks. I tell him you're surviving. He tells me that's good. That's what he wanted. Then we talk about other things and pretend his heart isn't breaking." "And yours?" Dante smiled, sad and knowing. "I've lost a lot of things, Emma. Friends, family, pieces of myself I'll never get back. But losing him to safety, to a life where he might actually die of old age instead of a bullet, that's a loss I can live with." He left her his new number, hugged her tight enough to hurt, and drove away in a car that wasn't bulletproof for the first time in his life. Summer came, and with it, tourists who asked Emma for book recommendations and made small talk about the weather. She smiled, helped them find what they needed, and went home to her small apartment above a bakery that smelled like bread and cinnamon. She dated, briefly, a teacher named Michael, who was kind and stable and bored her to tears within 3 weeks. She tried to make it work, tried to convince herself that normal was enough. But every time he touched her, she thought about Lucien's hands and the way they trembled when he'd said he loved her. She broke it off in June, and Michael took it better than she deserved, kissing her cheek and telling her she seemed like she was waiting for someone. He wasn't wrong. The call came in August, a year and 4 months after the plaza. Unknown number. Emma almost didn't answer, had learned to be wary of unknown numbers, but something made her pick up. Static, breathing, then a voice she'd given up hope of hearing again. "Emma." Her knees gave out. She slid down the wall, the phone pressed to her ear so hard it hurt. "Lucien. I'm sorry, I know I said I wouldn't, that I'd stay gone, but I needed to hear your voice, just once. I needed to know you're okay." He sounded different, older maybe, tired, but alive, unmistakably alive, and Emma felt tears streaming down her face. "I'm okay. Are you?" Define okay. A sound that might have been a laugh. "I'm alive, healthy, safe, living somewhere quiet where no one knows my name or my face. It's peaceful and lonely as hell." "Where are you?" "Can't tell you that. Not because I don't trust you, but because you're probably still being monitored. The FBI, or what's left of the families, or just general paranoia. I can't risk them tracing this call back to you." "Then why call?" "Because it's been 16 months, and I'm going insane not knowing if you're happy, if you've moved on, if you hate me for leaving." His voice broke. "I need to know you're living, Emma. Really living, not just surviving." She closed her eyes, pressed her palm against the wall to feel something solid. "I'm living. I have a job, a place, a life that's mine. It's small and quiet and nothing like what we had, and I'm okay with that most days." "Good. That's good." Silence stretched between them, filled with everything they couldn't say. "I still love you," Emma whispered. "I know I shouldn't, I know it's stupid and pointless and doesn't change anything, but I do. Emma, yeah, you don't have to say it back. I just needed you to know. Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, you're not alone. You're carried. By me. Always. She heard him breathing, ragged and uneven, and knew he was crying. I love you too, he said finally. More than I've ever loved anything, and I'm sorry I can't give you more than this. Phone calls in the dark. Promises I can't keep. A future that doesn't exist. Maybe someday it will. Maybe. But he didn't sound convinced. I have to go. This line's not secure and I've already stayed too long. But Emma, thank you. For everything. For seeing something in me worth saving, even when I couldn't see it myself. Lucien, wait! The line went dead. Emma sat on her apartment floor, the phone still pressed to her ear, and let herself fall apart. Sobbed until her throat was raw, and her eyes were swollen, and the bakery owner knocked on the door to ask if she was all right. She wasn't. But she would be. She had to be. 2 years passed. Emma left Vermont, moved to a small coastal town in Maine where the ocean was always angry and the winters were brutal and nobody cared about her past. She opened her own bookstore, a tiny thing in a converted house, and filled it with the stories she wished she could live. She made friends slowly. Maggie, who ran the coffee shop next door. Tom, a fisherman who brought her fresh catch and terrible jokes. Sarah, a librarian who shared Emma's love of thrillers and terrible wine. They knew nothing about who she'd been, only who she was becoming, and that was enough. She thought about Lucien every day. Sometimes in passing, a song on the radio, a stranger's laugh, the smell of expensive cologne. Sometimes like a knife, alone in bed, staring at the ceiling, remembering the weight of his body on hers and the way he'd whispered her name like a prayer. Morrison called every few months, always with the same message. Still safe? Still monitored occasionally, but nothing serious. Still free to live however she wanted. She never asked about Lucien. Morrison never offered. Dante visited twice, both times bringing news about the family's continued legitimization and Mama's insistence that he settle down and give her grandchildren. He was dating someone, a woman named Claire, who worked in nonprofit law and had no idea about his past. I'm happy, he told Emma over coffee in her bookstore. Or at least I'm learning how to be. It's weird. Normal is weird. Tell me about it. He studied her, those sharp eyes missing nothing. You're still waiting for him. I'm not waiting. I haven't figured out how to stop loving him yet. I don't think you ever will. I don't think he'll ever stop loving you either. Some things don't heal. They just scar over and ache when it rains. He was right, but Emma didn't say it out loud. The second call came 3 years and 2 months after the plaza, on a Tuesday that started like any other. Same unknown number, same static, same voice that made her heart stop. Emma, it's me. She was in the bookstore, shelving returns. She set down the books with shaking hands and moved to the office, closed the door, and tried to breathe. Hi. Hi yourself. He sounded better this time, steadier. I'm breaking every rule calling you again. Morrison would kill me if he knew. Dante would too, probably. But I can't. I needed to tell you something. What? I'm coming home. Emma's world tilted. What? Not to New York. Not to the life I left. But to the States. Somewhere I can breathe without looking over my shoulder. Somewhere I can maybe, possibly, if the universe is feeling generous, see you again. His voice was raw with hope and terror. If you want that, if you don't hate me for disappearing, if there's any part of you that's still, where? What? Where are you coming home to? Tell me, and I'll be there. Silence. Then, Portland, Maine. There's a coffee shop on the waterfront called Maggie's. I'll be there September 15th at noon. If you come, I'll know. If you don't, I'll understand. Lucien, you don't have to decide now. Think about it. Really think about whether you want this, want me, back in your life after everything. Because if you show up, I'm not letting you go again. I can't. September 15th. Noon. I'll wait all day if I have to. He hung up, and Emma stood in her office, staring at the calendar on the wall. Her heart beating so hard she thought it might crack her ribs. September 15th was 3 weeks away. She called Morrison that night.
Is it real? She asked without preamble. Is he really coming back, or is this some kind of trap? Morrison was quiet for a long moment.
It's real.
He's been cleared, unofficially. The major players are dead or in prison. The FBI considers him a closed case. And he spent the last 3 years building a new identity so clean, even I'm impressed. He's not Lucien Varese anymore. He's just a man trying to come home. To me. To you. If you'll have him. Emma pressed her palm to her chest, felt her heartbeat wild and desperate beneath her hand. What if it doesn't work? What if we're too broken? Then you'll be broken together, or you'll break apart and learn to live with it. But Emma, and I'm speaking as someone who's represented a lot of people in a lot of situations, you'll regret it forever if you don't try. She knew he was right. September 15th arrived cold and bright, the kind of day where the ocean looked like hammered steel and the wind cut through even the warmest jacket. Emma spent the morning pacing her apartment, changing clothes 3 times, putting on makeup and taking it off and putting it on again. At 11:30, she walked to Maggie's coffee shop, her hands shaking so badly she had to shove them in her pockets. The shop was busy, filled with tourists and locals grabbing their afternoon fix. Emma found a table by the window that overlooked the water and ordered coffee she didn't drink. 11:45, 11:50, 11:58. The door opened. And there he was. Lucien looked different, his hair shorter, no beard, wearing jeans and a sweater instead of the designer suits she remembered. But his eyes were the same, gray and intense, and fixed on her like she was the only thing in the room. He crossed to her table slowly, like he was afraid she might disappear, and stopped a few feet away. "Hi," he said, his voice rough. "Hi. You came. You called. I wasn't sure you would. After everything, after what I put you through, I thought maybe you'd moved on. Found someone better, someone who deserved you." Emma stood, closed the distance between them, and touched his face with trembling fingers. He leaned into her palm like a man starving for contact, and she felt wetness against her hand. "You're an idiot," she whispered. "I know. You disappeared for 3 years. I know. You made me think you were dead. I'm sorry. You broke my heart into so many pieces I'm still finding them. I know. I'm so sorry." His hands came up to cover hers, holding her palm against his cheek. "I spent 3 years trying to become someone you could love without fear, someone who didn't carry death in his wake. I don't know if I succeeded, but I'm here. And I'm asking, begging, for a chance to prove I can be the man you deserve." Emma looked at him, this man who'd destroyed her life and saved it in the same breath, who'd taught her about violence and love and the terrible space between them, and made her choice. She kissed him. Right there in Maggie's coffee shop, surrounded by strangers who didn't know what it meant, she kissed him like she was drowning and he was air. He kissed her back with 3 years of loneliness and hope and desperation, his hands in her hair, her body pressed against his like they could merge into one person and never be apart again. When they finally broke apart, both gasping, Maggie was standing behind the counter with tears streaming down her face. "That," she said to the whole shop, "is what love looks like. Someone buy these two a coffee. On the house." Laughter rippled through the crowd, and Emma felt her cheeks burn. But she didn't let go of Lucien, and he didn't let go of her. "Come on," she said. "Let's get out of here." She took him to her apartment, up the stairs that smelled like fresh bread, into the space she'd built when she thought she'd never see him again. He looked around, at the books overflowing the shelves, at the photos of her new friends, at the life she'd made without him. And she saw something break in his face. "You did it," he said softly. "You built something beautiful. I survived. There's a difference. No, you lived. That's more than surviving. That's what I wanted for you." Emma sat on the couch, pulled him down beside her, and took his hand. "Tell me everything. Where you've been. What you've been doing. Who you are now." So he did. He'd spent the first year in Portugal, healing from the gunshot wound that had nearly killed him, living under a name Morrison had created and learning what it meant to be nobody. He'd worked construction, then as a translator, then teaching English to kids who didn't care about his past. He'd gone to therapy, real therapy, the kind that pulled apart trauma and examined it in the light, and learned that the man his father had been didn't dictate who he had to become. He'd made friends who knew him as Marcus Reed, a quiet American with a talent for languages and a sadness in his eyes he never explained. He'd call Dante every month, always from different phones, always careful, always asking about Emma without saying her name.
I thought about you every day,
he said, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. Every morning when I woke up alone, every night when I couldn't sleep, every moment in between. You were the reason I kept going when it would have been easier to just stop. I'm glad you didn't stop. Me too. He looked at her, really looked, and she saw the weight he carried. I can't promise you easy, Emma. I can't promise the past won't catch up with us eventually, but I can promise you honesty, loyalty, a life where I choose you every single day, no matter what it costs. That's all I need.
Is it? Because I need you to understand, I'm not the same man who walked into that ballroom.
I've changed. I'm trying to be better, but I'll never be normal. I'll never be safe. And loving me means accepting that. Emma leaned in, rested her forehead against his, and breathed him in. Coffee, and ocean salt, and something uniquely him. I don't want normal. I want you, broken parts and all, as long as you want me the same way. I do, more than anything. They sat like that for a long time, just breathing together, rebuilding the connection that 3 years apart had strained but not severed. Then Emma pulled back, looked him in the eye, and asked the question she'd been carrying for years. What happens now? Lucien smiled, and it was real. The first genuine smile she'd seen from him since before everything fell apart. Now we start over. Build something new. You keep your bookstore. I find work that doesn't involve anything illegal. We have dinner together and talk about normal things like what movie to watch and whether it's too cold to go to the beach. We're boring and domestic and alive. And if the past comes back, then we face it together. But Emma, I really think it's over. The families have moved on. The FBI has moved on. Even I've moved on. All that's left is us and the choice to keep choosing each other. Emma thought about the girl who'd walked into a Manhattan skyscraper 4 years ago, desperate and broke, and so naive she didn't see the trap closing around her. She thought about everything that girl had endured, the violence, the fear, the impossible choices, and how she'd emerged someone different, harder, wiser, unbreakable in ways she'd never imagined. That girl wouldn't recognize her now. And Emma was grateful for it. Okay, she said, let's start over. But we do it right this time. No secrets, no running, no sacrificing ourselves for each other. We're partners. Equal. Understood? Understood. Lucien held out his hand, formal despite the intimacy of the moment. Hi, I'm Marcus Reed. I work in sustainable fishing, and I'm terrible at cooking. Nice to meet you. Emma laughed, took his hand, shook it solemnly. Emma Hale. I own a bookstore, and I read too much, and I'm probably going to drive you crazy. I'm counting on it. They spent the rest of the day talking, filling in the gaps of 3 years, learning each other all over again. Emma told him about her friends, her bookstore, the quiet life she'd built. Lucien told her about Portugal, about the therapy that had saved him, about the man he was trying to become. As the sun set over the ocean, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, they sat on Emma's small balcony with cheap wine and takeout, and it felt like the most normal thing in the world. I want to meet them, Lucien said suddenly. Your friends, the people you've built your life around. I want to know them. They'll have questions. I have answers. Most of them true. He smiled. I'm not hiding anymore, Emma. Not from you, not from anyone. If we're doing this, we're doing it in the light. So she introduced him. Maggie first, who took one look at the way Lucien watched Emma and declared them soulmates. Tom, who grilled him about fishing techniques and nodded approval when Lucien held his own. Sarah, who was skeptical until Lucien recommended 3 books she'd never heard of and won her over completely. They absorbed Marcus Reed into their circle without hesitation, because that's what small towns did. They made space for strays and broken things and people trying to start over. Dante visited a month later with Claire, and the 4 of them had dinner at Emma's apartment. Dante and Lucien spoke in Italian for most of the meal, catching up on family and business, the legitimate kind now, while Emma and Claire bonded over their shared experience of loving men with complicated pasts. You make him happy, Dante told Emma later, while Lucien and Claire were doing dishes. I haven't seen him this settled since before Papa died. Maybe ever. He makes me happy too. Is that allowed? After everything? If it's not, I don't care. You two earned this. Whatever this is. Morrison called on the 1-year anniversary of Lucian's return, his voice carrying satisfaction. I'm officially closing your file. Both of you. As far as the legal system is concerned, you're civilians with no connection to organized crime. Clean slates. Congratulations. Thank you, Emma said, for everything. We wouldn't have survived without you. You would have. You're both more resilient than you think, but I'm glad I could help. A pause. Be happy, Miss Hale. You've earned it.
2 years became 3. 3 became 5.
Lucian took a job teaching at the local community college. Languages and literature, things that had nothing to do with his old life. Emma expanded her bookstore, adding a small cafe and hosting reading groups that became the social hub of the town. They bought a house together, a small cottage 2 streets from the ocean, with a yard that flooded in heavy rain and windows that rattled in the wind. They painted it blue, planted a garden that mostly died, adopted a cat that hated everyone except them. They fought sometimes, about dishes, about money, about the fact that Lucian still occasionally woke up screaming from nightmares Emma couldn't chase away. But they always came back to each other, always chose to stay, always remembered what they'd survived to get here. On their 5-year anniversary, Lucian took Emma to the beach where they'd first talked after his return. They walked the shoreline as the sun set, their hands intertwined, their feet leaving prints that the tide would erase.
I have something for you, he said, stopping to face her. Emma's heart kicked up. Lucian, it's not what you think, or maybe it is. I don't know. I've been practicing this speech for 6 months, and I still don't know if I'm going to get it right. He took her hands, and she felt them trembling. Emma Hale, you saved my life in every way a person can be saved. You saw the worst of me and stayed anyway. You taught me that love doesn't make you weak. It makes you braver than you ever thought possible. He dropped to one knee, pulled out a small box, and Emma's vision blurred with tears. I don't have a criminal empire anymore. I don't have money or power or anything I used to think mattered. All I have is a quiet life in a small town and a heart that belongs completely to you. And if that's enough, if I'm enough, I want to spend the rest of my life proving that you made the right choice when you didn't run. He opened the box. The ring was simple, a single diamond on a silver band, nothing flashy or ostentatious. Perfect. Will you marry me? Emma dropped to her knees in the sand, grabbed his face, and kissed him through her tears. Yes, yes, you idiot. Of course, yes. They were married 3 months later in Maggie's coffee shop, surrounded by the family they'd chosen. Dante and Claire, Isabella, who cried through the entire ceremony, Tom and Sarah and Maggie, and everyone who'd made space for 2 broken people trying to heal. Morrison officiated because the universe had a sense of humor. Emma wore a simple white dress. Lucian wore a suit that wasn't designer, wasn't expensive, was just him. They exchanged vows they'd written themselves, promising honesty and patience and to keep choosing each other even when it was hard. When Lucian kissed his bride, the whole shop erupted in applause, and Emma felt something inside her finally settle. This was home, not a place, not a thing. Just him and her and the life they'd built from the ashes of who they used to be. They honeymooned in Portugal, in the small coastal town where Lucian had learned to live again. He showed her the apartment he'd rented, the cafe where he'd drunk coffee every morning, the beach where he'd walked and thought about her and wondered if he'd ever see her again. I was so lonely, he told her on their last night, lying in bed in a small hotel with the ocean crashing outside. Every day I thought about calling you, coming back for you. But I was terrified I'd lead danger straight to you, terrified you'd moved on, terrified of 100 things that seem so small now. I was lonely too, Emma admitted. I had friends, a life, all the things I thought I wanted, but none of it meant anything without you. We're never doing that again. No more running, no more hiding, no more protecting each other by leaving. From now on, we're a unit. Understood? Understood. They returned to Maine to their cottage and their cat and their ordinary, extraordinary life. Lucien taught his classes and came home smelling like chalk and old books. Emma ran her bookstore and hosted events that brought the community together. They had friends over for dinner, argued about which movie to watch, made love like they were still discovering each other after all these years. On quiet nights, when the ocean was loud and the world felt very far away,
They sat on their porch and talked about the past without flinching from it, about Vincent Costa and Natalyia and the plaza, about the choices they'd made and the prices they'd paid. "Do you regret it?" Emma asked once, 2 years into their marriage. "Any of it?" Lucian thought about it, really thought. "I regret the people I hurt, the lives I destroyed. The man I was before you showed me there was another way. But I don't regret you. I could never regret you. Even if I hadn't walked into your office that day, you would have found your way out eventually. Maybe, but I wouldn't have had a reason to want out. You gave me that. You gave me everything." Emma leaned against him, felt his arm come around her shoulders, and watched the stars appear one by one over the dark water. "We did okay," she said softly. "Didn't we? We did better than okay. We survived. We're happy. That's more than I ever thought I deserved." "You deserve it. We both do." They sat like that until the cold drove them inside, and then they made tea and read in comfortable silence. Two people who'd walked through fire and somehow made it to the other side. Years passed. The bookstore thrived. Lucian's students loved him. They traveled when they could, Europe, Asia, places neither had seen when they were running for their lives. They visited Dante and Claire, who'd had twins and were drowning in diapers and exhaustion and joy. They attended Isabetta's 80th birthday, where she held court like a queen and told embarrassing stories about Lucian as a child. They grew older together, laughed more, cried less, built a life so normal it sometimes felt surreal. On their 10th anniversary, Emma found Lucian standing on the beach where he'd proposed, staring at the ocean with an expression she couldn't read. "You okay?" she asked, sliding her hand into his. "I was just thinking about that first day. When you walked into my office and tied my tie, and I knew even then that you were going to destroy me or save me. Maybe both." "And which was it?" "Both." He smiled, turned to face her. "You destroyed the man I was, saved the man I could be, and I'm grateful for it every single day." "Even the hard days?" "Especially the hard days, because those are the ones that prove we meant our vows, for better or worse. And it's been mostly better." Emma reached up, touched the silver at his temples, the lines around his eyes that came from laughter instead of violence. "I love you. Not who you were, not who you might have been, just you, exactly as you are. I love you too, always have, always will." They walked back to their cottage hand in hand, past neighbors who waved and called greetings, past the bookstore that bore Emma's name, past the life they'd fought so hard to build. Inside, the cat meowed for dinner. The answering machine blinked with messages from friends. The house smelled like the lasagna Emma had made that morning, waiting to be heated. Normal, domestic, safe. Everything they'd never thought they could have. That night, lying in bed with Lucian's arms around her and his heartbeat steady against her back, Emma thought about the girl who'd walked into that Manhattan skyscraper a decade ago. The one who'd been desperate and broke, and so tired of surviving she'd taken a job that should have killed her. That girl would have been terrified of this life. Too quiet, too simple, too far from the adrenaline that had kept her sharp. But Emma wasn't that girl anymore. She'd become someone who knew that the most radical act of bravery wasn't facing down killers or surviving torture or running from the FBI. It was choosing to stay, to love, to build something gentle in a world that rewarded violence. It was waking up every morning next to someone who'd seen her at her worst and chosen her anyway. It was this. "Emma?" Lucian's voice was sleep rough. "You still awake?" "Yeah, just thinking." "About?" "About how we made it. Against every odd, every obstacle, every reason we shouldn't have. We made it." He pulled her closer, pressed a kiss to her shoulder. "We did, and we're going to keep making it. For as long as we both shall live." Emma closed her eyes, let herself sink into his warmth, and finally, let go of the fear that had carried her through the last decade. They were safe, they were loved, they were home. And that, she thought, as sleep pulled her under, was the only ending that mattered.